podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for TWiT specials is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiT Live Special number 284, recorded on Thursday, April 21st, 2016. NAB 2016, Day 4. This TWiT Live Special is brought to you by Audible.com. Sign up for the Platinum plan and get 2 free books. Go to audible.com/twit2. We've shown you some of the slickest cameras. We've shown you some of the best gear. We have shown you some of the desktops that you need to make your workflow work. Well, now we're going to show you the rest of it. I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, here with TWiT TV at NAB 2016 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's get broadcasting.
Obviously, camera technology at NAB, I mean, that's kind of what it's all about, right? Broadcast professionals, all sorts of cameras, lenses, the whole 9 yards. This is where you got to come if you want to check out the latest and greatest. And Canon is no stranger to that world. Alex Sachs, Pro Market Specialist for Canon, is here at the stage. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to get you here on the stage to kind of talk about some really interesting stuff, especially a little bit later we'll talk about how this is being applied to kind of the big screen, which you know everybody can kind of rush out and enjoy. Cool stuff there. Before we get there, you guys have had some pretty awesome announcements here. Let's start with cameras. The ME200S SH camera. Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, it's the second, excuse me, it's the second in our multi-purpose series. So we had a camera come out called the ME20. It's a low-light camera. It's really, really amazing. It's probably the best low-light camera in the world with a really large sensor in it. And then we released this camera, which has the same body size and weight, but with a Super 35 size sensor on the inside of it. And what's amazing about that is it opens up dual pixel autofocus. It opens up a lot of the things that you get from a C100 Mark II, whereas our big brother kind of ME20 camera was really a new sensor. It was something that no one had seen before because we made the photo sites really large. And originally the camera was intended for military applications, but again, we call it multi-purpose because the idea is it can be used for a lot of different types of shoots.
I mean, the thing is super compact.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a tight little package.
Yeah, and what's cool is it's one of the first cinema products we've had with straight edges, and that's something that we've been pushing on Canon Inc. to say, you know, a lot of the cinema customers are looking for something a little bit more easy to manipulate and easy to build off of. A lot of our cinema products look more like a hybrid DSLR. It looks like a DSLR that's kind of been pulled and stretched almost on steroids a little bit.
Right.
And this is kind of the first cinema product that we've seen that is has straight edges, which sounds like it's something like people wouldn't want, but the cinema world wants to be able to build it. You know, so the idea is they make it square and then they start putting accessories on it. So when we made the ME20, it's a incredible low light camera. It's also a large sensor cinema camera. This is something that we kind of have just started to realize how special that is, because if you want full frame right now, you have to use a DSLR or you have to use a very, very expensive product that's out there. So we've kind of brought this full frame cinematography to the mass market, you know, with this incredible new sensor. But so and that's the ME20. The ME200, which is what we announced at NAB this year, is kind of the little brother to it. It's a much more affordable price point. It's got a smaller sensor. You know, a lot of our zooms and stuff cover Super 35, so on the bigger sensor, they weren't able to really be used. So now we have a product that you can kind of modularly rig on your shoulder or on a fixed lens or on a gimbal or a drone. It's kind of, you know, again, it's called multi-purpose, so it can go on many different ways.
I love it. I love just how compact the back kind of control panel is. Everything that you need is there, but there's really no wasted space on this thing, even though it's a tiny little cube.
Yeah, I mean, there's no. It's funny. There's no internal battery. There's no recorder. It's very simple. That's what I like about it. It's kind of been boiled down to just doing one thing really well, and that's you know, just creating a great image. And then so you'll need an external recorder. You'll need rigging and things for it. But that's the idea. Is if you need to mount it somewhere, you know, in a fixed camera area, you don't need all the pieces. You can kind of take it apart and just have a really small little lens box, or you can build it up.
Yeah, or if you know, I'm sure there are plenty of applications where the large camera, you know, it just doesn't fit where it needs to go, and this is a tiny little.
Yeah, the idea is to be flexible. Yeah,
yeah,
you know, if you're a cinema person, you may want to consider a cinema camera, but if you're someone who's doing a lot of these different types of shoots, or you're looking for added value for a camera that can do different things, this is probably the right tool for you.
Excellent. So cinema keeps coming up. You have the 1880 compact servo. It's a cinema lens. Tell us about that.
I'm so so excited about this. This is something that we didn't know was coming, and it's really a cool market because a lot of my customers who do reality TV shooting and they need that ENG servo style zoom, the only price point we had at this point was closer to $30,000. So if with Deadliest Catch is one of our customers, and they said, hey, when can we get an EF lens with a rocker on it, and we were like, yeah, that'd be something really cool. And we released a really interesting lens that's more of a DIY YouTube shooter with a little motor on the bottom. But this is actually more of a cinema lens that's come out. So it has an integrated servo on the side of it. And what's really exciting is the power comes from the mount. So you don't actually need power. It's going to pull it right from that EF mount through the camera. So that's what's really exciting about it. And you can see kind of, the integrated servo. That actually doesn't come off. But then we made a grip as well. So if you want to get it up on your shoulder or mount it to a handheld rig, it's a really, really amazing situation. And something that, the idea is don't think of it as a rehoused still lens. It's really more of a really well-priced cinema lens because there's minimal breathing on it. It really has a lot of those cinema features to it. Nice, smooth, round bokeh, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like it has nice extension on it.
Yeah, and the other thing is, too, we've been told this is the first in a series. So, our customers, we realized there was a hole kind of in the market between our really high-end cinema lenses and our still lenses. So we're right in this price point of about $5,500 that's right between a still lens and a, $20,000 compact zoom. So really amazing to kind of open this world up to people who wanted a cinema lens but maybe couldn't get to that price point. And then also people who have a cinema lens but are looking for something maybe a little more lightweight for small handheld work or on a documentary or something like that, and still want that servo but don't want to lug maybe their 17 to 120 or our ridiculous 50 to 1,000.
Sure. Okay, so talking about price point, we actually didn't talk about it on either of these cameras, but let's start with this one first, the 1880 compact servo. What's that going to set people back?
So it's going to be $5,500, and then the grip that you don't need the grip to make the zoom work, but it's just more of an added convenience. Is another $500, so about $6,000.
Yeah, $6,000.
Yeah,
not bad. And then how about the ME200S?
ME200 is going to be $5,999, so just under $6,000. So really, really amazing camera. The lens is kind of this revolutionary price point with the functionality, because what I've found about it too is a lot of the times if you need multiple things on a shoot, you actually do need some zoom shots, but you also want a servo. You have to usually bring multiple lenses. This one could be full manual or complete auto. That's what's really cool about it. It's got our dual pixel autofocus, stabilization, a lot of really amazing auto iris, which is kind of more of a broadcast style feature. So we'll still get some of those broadcast guys who are looking for that type of feature. Really, really exciting lens. It's very, very versatile.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so let's talk a little bit about 4K, 8K. There's just so much going on in this space right now. I know that I read a little bit about some prototype 8K cameras and lenses that you have at your booth. Also, the 8K ride experience, which apparently I need to stop by and check out sometime today.
Oh my God, the 8K ride is so amazing because what we've done is it's 4 4K projectors creating an 8K image, and then 2 projectors on the side to kind of create peripheral vision. So you know how your peripheral vision's a little soft? So when you're standing there and you're staring right at the front of the screen, it's feeling like it's you on there, because of the resolution and because of the simulated kind of peripheral thing. The first time I saw it, we had it at Expo this last year. It was just amazing. I couldn't even believe it. So I would encourage you and definitely anyone to check it out because no one else really has an experience like this. But what's really amazing is, we're showing 8K. We don't really have a commercial 8K product. It's more of look at what Canon can do with the technology. So we have an 8K camera, which is really it's kind of an interesting way we did it. It's 4 4K images to 4 Odyssey 7Qs, and then we just take those 4 4K images to create an 8K image. So really kind of interesting way to approach that right now. We had to create an 8K lens for it. We had to create a specific body that could split each quadrant into 4K, and then we would kind of piece it together. And then when you create 8K, you need something to show it on. You could shoot 8K and then look at it on 4K, and you're not really doing it justice. So we created these amazing 8K displays. Again, we're not commercially available, maybe not for a while or ever, but the idea is look at what we can do. And what I love about 8K is it's just to the point of human vision. So when you're staring at that display, we don't need 3D anymore. It kind of becomes that real 3D because the depth is there, the resolution is there. I mean, after 8K, your eyes can't really resolve it anyway. So we're gonna have to start making a new eyeball for people if they want to go higher than 8K. So really, really interesting stuff. Definitely worthwhile.
I will absolutely stop by and check that out. And people who aren't at NAB obviously might have a hard time checking that out.
Absolutely.
Something that they might have the ability to check out, though. I mean, it's this month, right? A Beautiful Planet.
Oh, yeah.
The IMAX, shot with a Canon EOS C500 and an EOS 1D C cinema cameras in 4K.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this, because this sounds like a really, I mean, first of all, it sounds like an amazing experience.
Yeah.
But I don't know, can you shed some kind of background on this?
Absolutely. I mean, it's an amazing film. I've only seen little bits of it. It's still kind of, we've had some previews here and there, but I saw about 40 minutes of it screened at the Chinese Theater in California, and this was a real IMAX projection of it, and it was just unbelievable. I mean, at that point, you know, a lot of people know the C500. It's an amazing camera, but it requires external recording. But the image that comes out of it in our RAW is it's just gorgeous. And what they also did was they put some of our still cameras and just shot 3 or 4 seconds, 3 or 4 frames per second, and kind of interpolated into this beautiful, smooth gliding motion. So it's almost like literally the cameras outside of the space station just gently gliding over the Earth, and they're photographing Earth from these really amazing heights, because it's not just like, you know, a tiny little version of Earth. You're seeing the scope of maybe Texas and the oil fires burning at night, and it just gives you a really window into what's going on in our planet. I mean, I've never seen Earth like this. That's what's so beautiful about it. You just have this amazing sensory experience when you kind of get into it, because, you know, they were able to get such amazing access. And one thing that I was always really proud of is that the cinematographer on this project tested a lot of cameras and came away with that the C500 was the image that he wanted. It wasn't something that was like, oh, Canon's going to help with it. It was really a scrutinized decision for IMAX and for the cinematographer, and they said C500 is the right thing for us. I mean, they have other considerations as well. Bringing a camera into space is a whole different thing. You know, we had to replace cameras every few months, because what happens in the atmosphere is the sensors start to degrade because of just there's no gravity and things up there, and there's no real way to clean things. So you know, every camera, that's going to happen up in space. So it was a really cool thing. One of our guys, Tim Smith, was actively involved with this project. He's, you know, knows the cinematographer very well, and just, you know, kind of geeked out about the process. I think he secretly wants to be an astronaut, to be totally honest with you. So he really loves.
This is a good way to get yourself close.
Oh yeah. No, it's really amazing. I can't wait to see it in the theater, because you know, to me, no one's really seen the Earth like this before. The distance that they were at was something very unique.
Well, I think, and what you were just talking about, just with the 8K experience back at your booth, that once you get to a certain resolution and a certain you know, size of coverage, you know, your peripheral vision, all this kind of stuff, you get to a point of being able to kind of trick yourself into understanding and believing that you're actually there. I mean, we all want to go to, I mean, I can speak for myself, but I'm sure I'm speaking for a lot of other people that are listening and watching. We all want to go to space.
Absolutely.
We all want to know what it looks like to look down on Earth, and not for it to be, I'm watching a video of Earth, but for it to really feel like you are floating up in space looking downward. And it seems like we're getting pretty close to that.
Yeah. I mean, that was the experience. It wasn't a video at this time. This was like, I'm sitting outside. The resolution of what it was. You know, we're not quite, you know, 8K again is kind of the benchmark, but obviously we can't really show it anywhere, you know, yet, except on our prototype displays. Exactly. I mean, I think we're moving in that direction. We're still a little ways away from 4K broadcast, but obviously acquisition in 4K has kind of been around for years.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
I love this stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Alex Sachs, Pro Market Specialist at Canon. Really appreciate you stopping by. And
thanks for having me. This was great.
I'm talking with So Vang, VP of Advanced Technology at NAB. And so you're demonstrating what ATSC 3.0 broadcast will look like to the consumer and what kind of capabilities it will offer that we haven't seen before.
That's correct. Yes. So what we're demonstrating here is the interactive runtime environment, which is a key part of ATSC 3.0. So I'll go through a couple of examples here just to show you what we can do. So here, one of the key things about local broadcasting is the weather. So here's a quick example of a weather application that we have developed using the ATSC3 interactive runtime environment. We shrink the video to the upper right corner, and we show the weather for the week. Another example of the kind of services that you can do is on demand here, and this is readily available with over-the-top services, but this is to demonstrate the broadcasters can actually do this as well. And here we go, and let's just go ahead and walk it through. Let's buy this movie. Welcome to cash. All right. And these are examples. And the final thing I want to show you here is local news on demand. These are assets that TV stations actually already have, but they don't have a good way or convenient way to make it available to the viewers. So 3.0 provides that kind of capability to make it, to allow the local broadcaster and local broadcasters to actually make this easily accessible to the viewers. So here is a on-demand news service. We select it, and here are all the stories that could be select. And if you select on, let's select on this political campaign trail, and here we go.
This is very exciting. It's something that we've never seen before in broadcast TV, but it should make the TV experience much richer, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think that is the key to 3.0. It's really is the technology will allow broadcasters to create a much richer and more engaging experience for the viewers.
So one of the great things about being at NAB or like any tech conference is you get to meet fascinating people. Everyone here, of course, is talking about VR, but VR has a rich history, and I was super excited to meet one of who I consider one of the pioneers in virtual reality, certainly one of the founding fathers, I would say, Gregory Panos.
Hi, Megan.
Thanks for coming on. So you've been on TWiT, and you've been on Triangulation, so but some of the audience might have not seen those shows. Let's start a little bit about your background.
Well, you know, it's interesting that I'm here at NAB. I have a background in journalism, TV production and direction, and I discovered computer graphics right around the time that I thought I would figure out a way to utilize my degree professionally. And I completely shifted gears and ended up in the lab where all the Pixar founders are at New York Institute of Technology. And that put me on the path of computer graphics, and was involved with that for a long time. And eventually I discovered real-time computer graphics and then VR. And once I got a taste of VR, I said, I got to know everything about this.
So what year was that where you remember feeling that?
Probably the early 80s to mid 80s, we started experimenting with VR. I had landed at Rockwell International Space Station Division in the visualization lab. So we were developing a lot of simulations for pre-visualization of different space station designs. And VR was just starting to crystallize, so we thought that was a really great way to examine and to check out different designs of space stations by flying around them and having different points of view with head tracking and various types of interfaces and control systems to place your point of view dynamically.
Right. Yeah, I mean, VR is big in NASA. I think I told you yesterday, I was at the Udvar Hazy Air and Space Museum in DC, and they have this headset from 1984, I think.
Right.
And it's this huge thing. But I mean, it doesn't look that different than what we see today. I mean, it really doesn't. It's fascinating.
Well, we as humans haven't evolved that quickly. Our technology is evolving at an immensely quick rate, and so our perceptual systems will remain relatively constant for a much longer period of time than will the adoption of technology to supply our sensory systems with material. So VR headsets that are hitting the market today in 5 years will be very different. They may still hug your face or be worn in some contexts, but a lot of people think that there'll be different kinds of contact lenses and various types of super high-res laser projectors and retinal projectors that will be on little frames that are barely visible, that will create a lot of the imagery that has to be supplied with a scuba mask.
Right. And of course, before the show, we were talking about the feeding tubes and the catheters you would also need, so you never have to leave the VR world.
Yeah, well, gamers don't like to be extricated from their potential to win, so they're going to have to figure out some way to eat and do the rest of their...
True, so work on that. Let's talk about terminology a little bit. VR is the word of the day. Everyone wants to talk about it. But a lot of people I've heard referring to VR as, when you figure out what they're talking about, it's really just 360 video, which is not really a virtual world. It might be a world you're not in if you're using VR goggles to use it, but to see it. But how would you separate the difference between 360 video and VR, and is it important to differentiate between the two?
It is important. Interesting, at NAB, the major uptake seems to be for 360 VR. So the problems with that for traditional broadcasters are resolution, bandwidth, update rate, lag time of the visuals. So as you spin your head around and you're at a football game or a baseball game or a basketball game, you don't want to have any effect of anything that's going to nauseate you or take you out of the experience of being there. So that's hard to do. It's very, very bandwidth intensive. So there's a big rush for the 360 cameras to do things internally, like stitching of the various cameras that are looking in different directions so the seams are not evident to a viewer, and somehow compressing the material so it's able to exit the camera and be available for streaming, and then the cylindrical point of view is actually a single stream that the VR visor from a user is only looking at a limited point of view that's navigating around that sphere.
Right.
So it's a pretty simple configuration. It's pretty universal for anyone that wants to serve content that way, but the considerations of compression and stitching and delivery and latency are all the real frontier problems that are being solved right now.
Well, when you think about live 360 video, does that just amaze you that they're able to do that live,
Right.
that live streaming, all that stitching, all that stuff that you've been working on and thinking about for so long, that
It
you
is.
can just
It's
do
amazing.
it in the instant?
Yeah, it was impossible to do in the past, and so it wasn't really practical. And interestingly, back in the 90s, there were a lot of religious discussions and arguments over whether 360 video was actually VR or not. So there were a lot of people working in the field that were doing rendered VR, where graphics cards were working overtime to try to create 3D imagery stereoscopically that you could navigate around and be in a world and have sense of depth and presence and objects in the world. Much more difficult to do. It requires 3D modeling, it requires high rendering rates, it requires all the art and the design and artifice of creating a virtual world, like a Second Life or other types of applications. In space, you would have to model the space station and the space shuttle and do the deploy operations for the various components. All had to be modeled in 3D. But you get stereoscopy for free when you work in 3D and you build and render that stuff. So gamers jump right on that because they want all of that. They want sense of depth. They want all that real time. They want navigability. For 360 video, you don't have to meet all those markers. But 360 video that's stereoscopic is much better than 360 video that's monoscopic. So it's hard to shoot stereoscopic 360 video. You need two cameras with a separated point of view that closely resembles the IPD or the interpupillary distance of your eyes for those two cameras. And functionally, it's hard to build a camera that can shoot in 10 directions stereoscopically.
Right.
But
Well,
it is happening.
Yeah, last week they had everyone was talking about the first VR surgery ever, but it was really just, they were shooting, it was the same thing in both of your eyes. You couldn't move around. It wasn't a virtual world. Like, it was great for people who are in science in the medical field to be able to look around, but it was, I think sometimes we're like putting the cart before the horse a little bit, just throwing out the word VR when it's not really that.
Yeah, well, that happens a lot. A lot of people love to claim that they're the first to do something. So I have a terrible habit of trying to correct them or show them a bit of history so they don't, and try to discourage them not to do it. And I get in some ferocious arguments sometimes, like, why are you ruining it for us?
Right.
And it's like, well, lying about it or being ignorant, doesn't help you.
Yeah, I mean, knowing our place in history is important in all ways, and also that there is a rich history of virtual reality.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about augmented reality. Yesterday was another big news story about Magic Leap, which is the company that not a lot of people know much about, but they have a lot of funding from Google.
Right.
And so yesterday, Kevin Kelly from Wired did a piece and said, this is a real thing. It's fantastic. And he knows VR. Like, he's been trying all the VR goggles that are on the market right now. And so what are your thoughts on Magic Leap?
Well, the reason why Magic Leap has created such buzz is because it's using a next-generation display technology using waveguide optics. So here we are in 2016, and nanotechnology and photonics and nano-optics have advanced to the point where we can fabricate various types of displays that are ultra thin, invisible, can be lit from the edge with microprojectors, and a lot of things we're learning from nature and biomimicry of natural processes of optics are being created in silicon and at a nano fabrication level optically. And AR requires the ability to see through something that is overlaid or rendered onto the point of view. Another important aspect of AR is point of view tracking. So where your glasses are and where your point of view is extremely important to what you're looking at and where you are in the environment. So Magic Leap's innovations are in environment tracking, point of view correction and rendering, and overlay of the high-resolution imagery that can either occlude or be semi-transparent over the real world that you're looking at. So as I look at you, the vision algorithms that are driving that experience are noticing the computer, noticing what's here with the microphone, using depth cameras and other technology, stereoscopy, to extricate 3D data that it uses to do the registration of what's being created for you to look at. So as you move around a little bit, the registration self-modifies in real time. So if it's overlaying something on your desk or on your laptop screen or in the air, it will shift where that is depending on where your point of view is to reflect a natural perceptual state.
Right.
And the application of the waveguide optics with all these other characteristics are what make Magic Leap a player in the field. And they've done a good job of getting the prototypes working and solving a lot of the problems. And the big companies are excited about it, as anybody is that has a chance to try it.
Yeah.
There's a few other players. There are a number of waveguide optic suppliers in Israel. There's Lumos, I think it is, Luminous, which I saw at CES. And they have very similar pair of glasses that do the overlay, and I was very impressed by them. So usually what you see and what you know is what is really happening. So I'm guessing that Magic Leap is using the same or very similar technology of the day as Luminous is showing, and that they're just implementing it a little better or doing it a little faster, doing a little better vision analysis.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there are lots of products on the market. I was over at the Epson booth. Epson is the sponsor of the TWiT network, but they weren't showing the printers with our sponsor. They were showing their augmented goggles.
The Moverio series.
Yeah, and they have a very specific use case. What do you think of those?
Well, I like the Moverios, and I compliment Epson for jumping into the marketplace early and actually finding real customers. Most of them are probably not that exciting customers to have, but they have been buying the systems and using them and utilizing them. And they're about to release the, I think it's the BT300, which is the third generation. So it's pretty cool looking. I got a picture of me wearing one yesterday, and I look styling.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what was so interesting. They do have this very specific market. They're for people with drones who are interested in drone photography, and so you can see where your drone is. You're not going to run into an airplane. You can see on the screen, but you can also see what you're shooting at the same time. And then same with just camera operators. And we were doing the segment on our camera operator, Daryl. Like, he picked it up, and he was like a kid in a candy store. He's like, "This is awesome. It's better for ergonomics because you're not like bending over, and you can just see." What you need to see.
Yeah, the connection between your hand and what you're looking at is like a traditional gaming problem, hand-eye coordination. And the faster feedback that you have in that loop, the better you can perform at any kind of task that requires hands or manipulation of something.
Right.
And the difference between AR and VR is AR can accomplish everything VR can, but VR is essentially AR in the dark. So if you occlude your AR display and your display doesn't require ambient light to work, it has its own emissive capability, then you essentially have a VR visor that you're working with. And the scene tracking cameras for AR that allow overlay and registration to occur are external to the display itself. They're just outside of the field of view of the display. So if you occlude the display and you block it off, the light, the sensory cameras will still also be able to track things as well. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do in blind AR that meet all the requirements of VR.
Right. So let's talk about some of the other smaller players we don't hear about. Obviously, Facebook and Google and GoPro and Apple even, has patents. What are some of the smaller VR players that are interesting to you?
Well, before we move on to that, the interesting thing you mentioned, patents. There's a gold rush for patents in VR right now, and the patent office is overworked, and they don't really search as best they can for prior art. So they issue these patents kind of on a whim and a prayer sometimes.
Yeah.
And Google and the big companies will snatch them up and publicize that they now have a patent for this and that. And there's going to be a lot of legal battling and wrangling in the future over prior art, who did this and who did that first. And they'll essentially be doing the work of the patent office ex post facto. And that hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen at some point. And there'll be a lot of feelings about that one way or another. I think smaller developers will be harder hit when a larger company decides to bring an infringement case that they for a patent they shouldn't have in the first place. And that's going to be sad and hard and tough. And I hope there's some way around that at some point.
Well, you also wonder about the big companies if they're just buying those patents just in case. With Apple, it's like that almost feels like how we know about anything with Apple. It's like, oh, look, they have a patent. But do you ever wonder if they're just, well, in case we want to do this, they're not really doing work on it right now?
No, they are. All of these companies have labs where they're hiring people to do development. And so a lot of people are watching what everyone else is doing and doing exactly the same thing, trying to do it a little better. They have their own twist to it. And VR and AR, at the end of the day, are not impossibly ridiculous tasks to accomplish. Luckily, in the years that we're living in, we have technology to actually perform these tasks. But like I said, we have two eyes, and we have stereoscopic vision, and we have two ears, and we can hear, and that's really all we have to accommodate at the end of the day. So whether it looks like an Apple design or a Google design, and they both feed our senses in the same manner, then we're going to have the same experience.
Right. I mean, do you think that in the future VR goggles will look like what they'll look like the Rift now, or do you think they'll be smaller, more like glasses?
Well, I think the curve is towards lighter weight, higher performance, a lower physical signature, more onboard processing, more environmental awareness of where the specific the display system is, so it will accommodate your environment better to create less stress for your senses. Because no matter how fast you update and how much stereoscopy you supply, or how wide the field of view is, or how great the resolution might be, or update rate, your neurological system can detect the fact that you're not really looking in the real world. So the detection may not be conscious on your part, but at some point in time, there will be some pushback by your own biology. And I think that's an interesting topic to explore.
Yeah, the neurological aspects. I mean, do you have thoughts on that? Like, what is it doing to our brain? Are the threats of it causing problems overblown or real?
Well, you're not going to hear much from developers and people selling product about that right now. That's anathema to them. They don't want to bring out any material about that hasn't been forced into the public with a factual basis.
Right.
I think people will have their own anecdotal experiences from using it, and now that we live in the age of the crowdsourced information sharing, that the group experiences and the averages that people can expect will float to the top by virtue of the crowd, and people will be aware of what the problems are. And that's a good thing for vendors and suppliers, because that information may not be something they'll willingly seek out,
right,
but as it's thrust upon them, they will accommodate and continue and try to solve development issues that brought about those problems.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I see a photo of a kid in VR goggles, on social media, and I think, oh, like it feels a little scary. And then I'm like, am I just like that mom that's overreacting? Like,
Yeah.
That I am.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, we don't know. There's not the science
they
behind
could be
it.
out breaking into cars and
Right, exactly.
creating mayhem out in the community, and they're quietly happy sitting on the couch, and you know where they are.
Yes, yeah, we want our kids to not.
And they're
ever go-
exhausted when
Right.
they come out,
Right.
so they're not ready to do anything crazy after
Right.
that.
Yeah, they can make trouble in VR, and then.
They used to say that about TV, didn't they?
Yeah.
Right? Oh my God, my kid's never going to be social or anything like
Yeah.
that. So.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about that? Like, talk a little bit about like the isolation aspect of it. That's another thing. Will we all be in our own worlds? Is that something that you fear?
Well, I don't have a lot of fears, really, about much of anything. But I have observed the uptake of tablets and smartphones has created a redirection of attention towards less social engagement with people. And one of the things I was just talking with a friend about this morning is the same problem. Let's say you're a parent and you want your kids to grow up to be socially acclimated and skilled at interacting with other people and be able to perceive various cues from people when they're having a conversation, and you might fear that they're not going to develop very well if they don't have a lot of experience and practice doing that. So just imagine a future where you have a 3D representation of yourself, call it an avatar. If it's photorealistic and it's derived from you in real life, I call it a persona form. It's just a construct that describes you 3D and visually and virtually. Your construct will represent you in the virtual world, just like you typing or chatting with somebody or sending somebody an email or texting them. They're getting a message from some other person. It's in text form or some other form, and they're satisfied with that level of interaction. They don't want to call you on the phone. They don't want to Skype with you. In VR, it might be fun and cool to interact with your persona in VR, and hopefully people will like and enjoy that, and they'll shift to interpersonal human interaction in VR that mimics real interpersonal interaction in the real life, and they don't lose any of those skills. I think it'll be a while before we get there. I think the important part, the important takeaway about that is we already see the distraction happening with the devices that we're using now. And if people are only want to interact with your virtual persona in the future, and they get really creeped out by talking to you in person, then they're going to prefer that, and they're going to avoid interacting in real life.
Right.
And I don't know whether that avoidance is very healthy or not,
Yeah.
but I think time will tell.
Yeah. I have so many more questions for you, and I think that our time is up. I think there's a lot of other people waiting to be interviewed. But before we go, I do want to spend some time talking about your VR history museum. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have a huge library of material from the 90s. I brought a video camera everywhere, and as silly as I looked taping everything, I have hundreds of hours of videotape of Mort Heilig, who's considered the grandfather of VR, giving lectures, and other conferences and sessions that were groundbreaking for which there's no other record. And I figured, well, how am I going to share this, and how am I going to allow some of the younger people that are engaging in VR companies and startups now who weren't born at the time, in helping them understand the history of this amazing transition in our time. So they would need to see these or watch these, and I think the best way to do that is to create a library that dynamically reconfigures itself as a navigable space that has wings and rooms and areas where you can sit down and watch a video of a particular person or of a particular conference or session or topic, and you can add search criteria before you enter the library, and it will reconfigure the space so you can navigate about and discover all the various things that you're looking at finding by wandering from room to room, rather than clicking and scrolling and clicking and scrolling and reading and looking at videos. the way we do it now. You'll be in VR, but you'll be learning and you'll be absorbing history. So my idea for the VR library is a platform to teach history, but the whole idea can be generalized to really any topic. And I think a lot of people that are going to do VR development in the future are going to be building these kinds of worlds and universes as well. One last point that I wanted to bring up is, back at NAB 99, I put together the first Super Session series here at NAB. We had 30 speakers all day long, 600 people in the room all day long. Doug Trumbull was one of our mini keynotes. Very, very successful session. And then many, many years went by, and now here we are. The technology's caught up. It's become relevant in NAB again. Next week is Silicon Valley Virtual Reality Conference. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday up in San Jose. People ought to look that up online at SVVR Conference. And then lastly, Brett Leonard, the director of The Lawnmower Man, one of the seminal films on VR, has come up with a word that he's been trying to get people to use. It's called story worlding.
Story worlding.
And I think it's a great term.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get people to adopt the word because storytelling, we've heard storytelling over and over and over again. It's Disney practically owns the buzzword of storytelling. If you break the storytelling rule, forget it. It's not Disney.
Yeah. So story world. So you're in VR, and you don't have to be looking in a certain place. You're just in the world.
Yeah. If you have a 360-degree environment from which you're immersed in some kind of entertainment, if you're going to turn around and look at the cameras or the people in the audience, that's one way to do it. But it's better if somebody designs an experience where there's actually something interesting to be looking at behind you or to the left or to the right, and if you happen to be drawn to that area and move in that direction, the story changes somewhat and the world changes with it. So I think that's an interesting challenge going forward. A lot of that's being discussed here at NAB is how do you create content for 360 VR, and then once you add navigation to the mix and you give the user the opportunity to wander around, well, how do you tell a story where that wandering is actually an asset?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there's a long tradition of that in science fiction, obviously. Like, you don't create a story as much as you create a whole world, I mean, with all of the books that we've always loved, the sci-fi books, it's a world that's been created. And so I like Story World. I'm going to use it. I'm going to spread it.
Yeah.
You should too. Story World. No more storytelling. Story World.
Story worlding.
Well, Greg, like I said, I have this long list of things I'd love to talk to you about. So hopefully we'll get to talk again. Thank you so much.
I'm an FOTWIT, a friend of the TWiT network. So.
Well, I am glad you.
I'll be up to Petaluma sometime soon.
Excellent.
Now that Leo's got his mojo going with his big ass VR system.
He does, and there's only more coming in all the time. Like I watched the TWiT that you were on before, and he was like, but now he's all in. So yeah, I would love for you to come up. So Greg, where is the best place that people can find all your work online? Where should they go?
Well, they can Google my name, Greg Panos. I've got a Wikipedia page, and then a lot of my real passion is in the area of creating photorealistic virtual characters to represent you in life and in the afterlife. So the Persona Foundation is an organization, a concept organization I've been trying to get going for a period of time to aggregate information about this, to represent virtual characters legally and create a whole culture around the uptake of people mindfully designing and developing their own virtual versions of themselves while they're alive and adding to that information rather than just piling everything into Facebook and leaving this world and hoping for the best. You take an active and a personal interest in adding all of your story and your life experiences to this construct, which can represent you in the virtual world and tell your story directly. So your great and great grandchildren will be able to have an interview with you and hear about your life, and it will be in VR, and it will look like you and talk like you and be a very accurate representation of the reality of who you were when you lived the life you lived.
Makes sense.
It's called the Persona Foundation.
Persona Foundation. You can find that online. And of course, the Silicon Valley Virtual Reality Festival.
Right.
Next month.
Yeah, Silicon Valley Virtual Reality Conference. I'm giving a panel there on avatourism, the personification of VR. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. I have some couple of great speakers. Brett Leonard might be one of them. Howell from USC, one of the premier researchers in the area, working with Paul Devevic. Great lab down there, is doing groundbreaking work in this area. So I'm just delighted that people are realizing the next phase of VR is the personification of VR. And I think that's when it's going to hit home and everyone's going to really decide that it's important.
If you walk around the halls of NAB, you're going to find every kind of 360 and VR product. It's hot. It's the hit. It's what everyone wants to do. But the question is that VR system, is that 360 system the right system? Well, here at the Nokia booth, I'm standing next to Alex Lindsay, and he thinks he's got the one that you're going to want. Alex, this Matrix-looking squid-like device,
It does kind of look like that.
you tell me, is actually the perfect VR system.
It's all a progress. We're moving forward. But I think that this is the first camera that we've really used that just feels like a production camera for live. So, the big thing is that we've been, as you know, building cameras, buying all the different cameras, building cameras, putting in together 6 cameras and 12 cameras and 14 cameras and 3 cameras. This is the first time where you walk up and you hit record and it just records. There's not like, you got power and memory in the back. You can literally not have it tethered to anything. You literally, you log onto it with your Mac. It's important to me, and simply just say record, and I've got footage. Now what it's actually doing here is we're taking the SDI output, and it takes all of these microphones. There's 8 microphones as well as 8 cameras, and it combines all those video channels into one HD SDI signal, which means it goes through all of our equipment really nicely. It gets into our system, and then they have some beefy computers that basically unmux that or uncombine them and stitch all of that back together into a stereo 360 live stream, which is we've almost not seen any stereo 360 live streams. And then to make it more complicated, because that was already not complicated enough, we decided to add 3 cameras. So now we have 3 cameras that we're able to switch from. Once it comes out of the stitcher, it's just an Ultra HD video. So it's something that's very easy for us to use. It's also generating 5.0 surround sound. So now you can actually hear different things exactly where they should be in space. Not only that, Nokia's built some technology that they're kind of talking about where they can actually track people who are in the stage and track them as their relationship to each camera. So every camera knows where people are related to it. So as we cut between cameras, your mix changes so that it represents it. And if they walk back and forth, you actually hear it. So it's the most fully featured, easy to use VR camera that we've run across so far. And so we're really excited about it.
Spatial location is a big thing. It's a new thing that you don't get in a lot of, the less expensive or maybe some of the bodged together 360 systems. Yes, you can stitch together. Yes, there are even cameras out there that will do the stitching in camera, so you get a unified feed that can go straight out to, say, YouTube or Facebook and their 360 offerings. But something that you were explaining to me before we started shooting was because it's got 8 cameras and 8 microphones, it can actually spatially place you exactly where you should be. So not only do you see, but you hear what you would be experiencing if you were actually in that location.
And you don't think it's a big deal until you throw the headset on. When you throw a headset on and this jib is going across the stage and you hear the sound going across there, you suddenly realize how important and what we've been missing up until now. And with a lot of the other rigs, we're trying to figure out how we put little mics in there and how we're going to do surround sound. Here it's all just built in. Now their system will also work with other mics, so we can take all the band music and everything else and run it through their system and place all of that as well. So everything in the scene, whether you're using the onboard cameras, which is easy if you're doing run and gun and so on and so forth, or you're using stuff that you're already recording, all of that is available to you for a surround sound mix.
All right, now we've got to ask this because we've got this unique opportunity to speak to a man who has been in the industry for a long time, who you've seen technology come and go. You've seen the promise of things like 3D that didn't quite pan out the way that we thought it would. We've seen now HDR technology really take the stage, and of course 360. How will this change the way that you produce? When you plan a project, when you bring your group to whatever production venue there might be, how does the promise of 360 done right change how you're going to create content?
Well, if you think about society, when we're studying ancient societies, one thing you notice is you can tell exactly when they started being able to eat, gather more food than they ate every day because they started making art. And now we're about to start making art because we're not worried about if all the cameras are on or if this feed worked or if the exposure's off or all of that stuff is going away with cameras like this. And now you can start to think about what do we create from there. And I think that is the big thing that we're excited about with the Ozo is that now I don't have to worry about whether the camera's going to work. I can set it down. I know it's going to record. It doesn't have to be tethered to anything. It's just going to work every single time I walk out and shoot it. And that's what we haven't been able to do up until now. And I think it is incredibly important for it to become something where I want to cover an event with 50 cameras or 10 cameras or 5 cameras. That would be, just something that is almost too painful to think about with a lot of the other rigs because it's just so much, complexity. With something that's actually built to just work as a production camera. And it is, it's more expensive than a lot of the other cameras. It is a production camera. It is a real camera designed to do real work. And that's the real distinction. And I think that's going to help get the kind of content that we want to see where people go, oh, now I understand why VR is important. And I think that is something that's been hard to see with a lot of video that's coming out. And this is just getting started. This is version 1, and it's the best thing we've seen so far.
We've been speaking with Alex Lindsay, the man, the legend from Pixel Core. Now, you can get yourself a less expensive 360 VR system, but if you want to do it right, you got to do it like the pros. Now, of course, Alex, if they want to find out more about the Ozo, they can always go to Nokia. But if they want to find out about what you've been doing with it and the productions that your company has been involved with, where can they find you?
The best thing to do really is just follow me on Twitter because I'll tweet things that are out there. It's hard to, a lot of the stuff we do, we don't talk about that much, but when I can, when I'm allowed to, I'll tweet something out. So Alex Lindsay, all one word with an A, is all you need to know, and you can just go up to Twitter and find it.
I have the pleasure to sit down here with Patrick Palmer of Adobe, professional video and audio for Adobe. How's it going, Patrick?
Going well, thank you, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. We actually use Adobe products at TWiT. We are, we edit all of these shows. The show that, this very interview right here is going to be edited using Premiere, so
Fantastic.
We're big fans.
Thanks for using our products.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit, obviously, the product is kind of the showcase here. You guys have the Creative Cloud suite now, and the updates just kind of come in large numbers, and they touch on so many products. So maybe we can take some time to kind of talk about some of those updates. And let's start with Adobe Premiere. That's, I think, near and dear to our heart.
Sure, with pleasure. There's actually so much to talk about that I'll focus on a couple of things, and then I'll basically refer to blogs.adobe.com. You can get so much more information for your particular area of interest there. But generally speaking, very excited to be here to see, how we fit in with what's new, what's the trend in the industry, and how we can help our customers to actually cope with all the trends out there. And there are some, right? Some are not necessarily new, but for a couple of years we said native workflows. Go for it because you don't need to manage anything, you can immediately get to work. So we've been kind of religious about taking native media in, and our customers loved it. They still do, and we're actually keeping up with our investment there, making everything as fast as possible, taking new formats in, so we make that as painless as possible for our customers. But still, 8K, you win. You got us convinced. Maybe there is a need for proxy workflows. So we're showing a whole new proxy workflow with Premiere Pro that's coming with the next major update. And it's very slick in a sense that when you do the ingest, it's basically just applying an ingest and proxy preset to your ingest workflow. You can start working right away.
Start working immediately.
In and out immediately.
That's so fantastic.
Actually, there's no difference there to what you've been doing so far. But once the proxies are generated, you can freely switch back and forth. Not only that might be helpful for really high resolution media or higher frame rate. All of those things come into play right now, right? It's not just more pixels. Sometimes it's better pixels. And sometimes it might be a combination of lots of things. HDR is something that we're invested in, showing new features here as well. So it's so much that you need to deal with. It's kind of nice to know that if you need to be on a lightweight device for parts of your work, you can do that with the proxies. As you can always come back to the original, no big deal, it's one click, but gets better.
Yeah.
This is the part
I'm sure it does.
Oh, it does. This is the part that I like the most. So with Creative Sync, our technology to connect to Creative Cloud storage, you have an opportunity to have the proxies live in the cloud. That gets really sweet when you get to another workstation. Say you've got your high-end thing someplace, and then maybe you want to do some editing with your MacBook Pro. when you're with the customer, when you're someplace else, maybe when you're at home. I don't know.
They do a
That's the
preview
thing.
of the take, and they say, actually, this is an edit that we really want to do. Instead of saving it for when you get back to your big machine
That's
at
exactly
home, you
right.
can just
For
do it
so many
immediately.
things, it doesn't really matter that much that you're with the original media, and sometimes it's really prohibitive with the heavy lifting with some of those new formats.
So explain what you see then in that scenario. The main media in this scenario is back at the big desktop at your office or at your home. You're on location somewhere and you've got the proxy on your display. Lower frame rate, lower quality to just kind of stream it back, or what is the experience like?
That's an interesting point because we're not streaming. We're syncing that to the other machine.
Got it.
So that's a little bit of be aware and prepare, right?
Sure.
You can't just run with it and say, oh, I have a 90-minute feature and I'm going to show it to someone. That's not how it works. But you're in control over how the proxies look like. So we don't actually predict a specific workflow with this implementation. We have a couple of nice presets that will work for a lot of people, so you don't need to invest a lot in getting started. But if you have specific needs, like say, you want to keep the resolution very high, but add a little compression because for what you do that isn't hurtful,
sure,
go for it. If you want to get as close to uncompressed as possible, just kill some resolution, that actually might look better if you're editing on an HD screen, because the real-time subsampling, downscaling, well, that's quick as it should be, but that means it's not necessarily as good as we can do in the background,
right,
which is also gives you a pretty good explanation why we're not just doing it in Premiere Pro. Media Encoder is fully capable of the same functionality,
Absolutely.
so you might actually not even be working with this on your main machine. You might let Media Encoder do the heavy lifting on another.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so and yeah, you mentioned 8K file support now for 6K, 8K files.
Might not be your output, but that's the point about the proxy workflow. Sure enough, it is very likely it's going to be part or maybe all of your input that it's higher resolution than your output format, at least for now. All of that is in flux, all of that's changing, but that's the point. It's a workflow that's very much accommodating whatever is the need, not necessarily going for old school, put a mezzanine in because you can't do any better. You can do better, but it's your choice.
And I mean, continuing on the kind of format front, obviously this has been a huge year for VR.
Yes.
And you guys have kind of built in some VR functionality, some really interesting VR functionality into Premiere.
So generally speaking, we want to be at the forefront of enabling our customers to get into the era of experimentation. I personally believe that's pretty much where we're at with VR right now. I'm not talking about games, and I'm not talking about VR
more
as a
immersive
thing,
video, let's say, than VR.
or even some other kind of video. I'm really actually not that sure that we're talking about something added on top of an existing experience. It could be other things, really. Or probably what you see today is exactly that. People are doing something on the side to a media production that helps people to get into a certain, even mood. If you think of something like The Martian, well, the team that did the shooting, they didn't go to Mars. It's all, what? Oh, I'm sorry for destroying the illusion, but the thing is, you can't even go there if you're shooting the movie.
Right.
Sure as hell, it looks very convincing.
Yes.
Once you see the movie, but presenting you with the environment that the actor is in as a sidekick is very intriguing because you can go places not even the crew that did the movie could go to.
Sure, sure.
You can think of many of those kind of movies. I can actually think of pretty much every kind of movie where it's interesting to visit those places.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you think about travel experiences, going outside of the media business, of the core of it, there's so much that you can do with VR experiences. But the thing is, there's not that much content out there yet. So, and then some people might say, okay, is that the next 3D? Again, I think because it's on the side something else, it's exciting because there also will be other kinds of monetization for that kind of content. So what do? Clearly there's a need to work in editing with those pieces, especially as if you were to put anything out without being properly prepped, with all the things that have been discussed about nausea, about carefully actually creating that environment, editing is a key piece of it. So we're introducing support for equi-rectangular, already stitched footage, and then you actually edit with that just like with anything else. More importantly, the viewer is fully VR capable. I think that's kind of the key to it. So without even putting goggles on, you can immediately start looking up and down with the angle of view that you'd be presenting. Left and right, of course. So any kind of really angle of view you might be taking. So you have a good preview and you will immediately be able to see whether there are things that shouldn't be in the image. Speaking of which, in After Effects, of course, It's interesting to see what our ecosystem does. After Effects has always been big about all the things that are in the product and how they connect with tools that are in our third partner ecosystem. And we have really great integration there for VR too. Like Metal actually allows you to drive an actual set of headsets, which is great for an eventual preview experience.
Sure.
Very much needed. You wouldn't want anyone to experience something full on that you just had as a preview, right?
Right.
But things like Mocha also exist where you can do 3D tracking within that environment. Think of text that is placed someplace, and then as you walk around, it freely floats in
Shifts
that
around
in that sphere, really.
Yep.
Things you can touch or think you can touch.
Yes.
I'm fascinated with it, and we notice a lot of our customers are too. So while this is clearly not mass market, it's this getting ready for it, and that's where we want to be putting at the heart of the application support for everyone to be able to start with it.
Yeah, it really makes sense for you to have those claws in early because it just feels like it's a snowball right now, and you got to get in for that support down the line. And then Lumetri has some new features that people are really excited about. I was watching the demo. I was like, this is like magic. It's really cool to see it work.
Yes, indeed. It's very nice to see the demos and even better see the response to it. Arguably, we've been even making a bet that people would be very interested in working more with color and light without becoming the expert on everything there is in that area. Because it's, there's a lot of heavy lifting on the algorithm side, and the usual approach for many years has been, and I'm guilty of it, I've been with a company that did the usual approach, if you will. We've been putting lots of sliders and many different interfaces in front of people. And that's great if you know what each of those things will actually do for you. If you use a combination of those, you get into an interesting maze. You might actually degrade the quality of the picture very quickly. So we took a step back on that, sat down with users and talked about what's actually essentially to bring color and light to your workflow without overwhelming your users and eventually including more people in the process. We've seen that time and time again now. No one's actually really waiting for anything in color grading anymore. The time when you had a locked edit were probably very convenient on a number of levels. Creatively, it was blocking. So the Lumetri workflow is all about that. It enables you to be creative from the get-go. It involves more people because of an interface that's intuitive and is not catering to people who are looking for as many sliders as possible.
Right.
So for some that might be disappointing. The feedback we're getting is for pretty much everyone else.
Yeah.
That's actually what they want. Fast access to something that's high quality, but so intuitive to access and always very good to the quality of the image that you can actually creatively can go crazy. So we have new HSL secondaries exactly designed in that way. We're putting it in front of you, but it's very lightweight in the approach towards the user. And so you can actually go a little deeper. We've now introduced a switch that will reveal a couple more options if you want to, but you get into it so quick and easily that it's not a dangerous tool anymore. And that's the approach taken with everything in that category. Interesting that you should ask about Lumetri for another reason, as that approach has now been kind of, let's say, adopted and moved even to other products.
Yes, I was just about to ask. Audition
would be a prime example.
Perfect example. And I think it's really important. We'll talk about this for sure. You're talking about Essential Sound Panel. I think it's really important, right? Because video content on the internet, we're talking about how explosive VR is right now. Even more so than that is just user-generated video right now. And and the bar is all over the map. You've got people who are beginners that are using your software. You've got professionals that are making motion pictures, that you're going to the movie theaters and you're watching your product on the big screen. The scale is wide, and so you have these powerful tools. They need to be accessible to all, and these are great features. I love this Essential Sound Panel, and definitely have some questions. Tell us a little bit about that.
So if you take the Lumetri approach and think about what can be done in the audio realm, it's pretty much the same deal. It's tools for experts who know what to dial in, but it's a huge stack of effects. And if you're task-oriented, and you just mentioned user-generated content, that's typically people who don't come from a background of 20 years of engineering, of sound engineering. So it isn't easy to create something that sounds as nice as it looks great. We found that a lot of people are getting into the visual part of it more easily now, partially because of those tools like we have in Lumetri, but the sound part not so much. And then there's that problem. Once that's not on the same level,
That actually makes your video content look worse. When it's bad sound,
Doesn't it? If it
their
sounds really
perception
good,
is
it adds
everything
that
is a
little
lot lower.
extra. So we looked into ways of making that more approachable too. And the result is, you mentioned it, the essential sound panel. So what is it? You now have, much as Lumetri in Premiere Pro, in addition, a panel that's very much dedicated to be much more intuitive, even very task-oriented. So I'll give you an example. There are a couple of tabs on top. You might be working on a soundtrack. In the past, we would have told you find the remixing effect and then deal with the various options and have a 3 minute 30 second soundtrack and make it fit the 2 minute 45 that is actually the length of your trailer. That worked beautifully, but again, it was a bit of a process finding it. And how about the tools you need for dialogue? It's so much of a process.
Yeah.
So now there are
and
these
understanding
tabs.
what they all actually do, like compression.
And if you
audio
do it every
compression
day,
is
you'll
really
forget.
difficult to explain to someone who
yes.
has no idea what audio
And
is.
if it's not your daily task, you forget. So you start looking for that again.
Yeah.
So in the Essential Sound panel, you click on that task for remixing your footage. Remixing your audio according to the length of the footage.
Got it.
It's there. It will always be there. You click on the next tab. Let's say you have dialogue, 20 clips, and I might be simulating that. People get closer to the microphone, get away from it. We're all familiar with the problem of dynamics. And yes, there are fantastic tools to deal with it, but little do I know how to work them properly so it makes for great continuity. So now what we do is, there's just one slider, I kid you not, that says dynamics. And it's very intelligent in the way it actually looks at the content. So we're actually analyzing the clips rather than
and it changes
making that
the
a unit.
functionality based on the content.
The curve on a
Yeah.
3-band is
Got
then
it.
immediately appropriate to the levels in your original footage, to the dynamics that already exist. So that will make for a much more fluid experience from shot to shot. So the idea is, yes, the user will for sure, it's intention-based really. The user knows, okay, I need to actually get that to a lower range of dynamics so everything's more present. But you don't need to know how to do that curve. You don't need to know
What is
how
the
much
threshold? What is
Yes.
the ratio? You know, all that kind of stuff.
It's fun to get into it. And speaking of which, I think more people will, because we're making a connection there, which is actually, to my mind, even more clever than what we're doing already with Lumetri. We're showing you what it's dialing in. So if you go to the effects
Good.
deck, if you're ever interested in taking a look underneath the hood, you'll be able to see what it does. So over time, you'll
break away
get
from that.
educated as you perform the task.
It's like training wheels for learning
Yeah.
how to
Totally.
treat your sound.
Then we have a
and
similar thing-
that was one of my
Sorry.
big questions. Was you know, it's like a big macro that's controlling a bunch of different functions, but really you can break that out at that point and say, okay,
Yes.
I'm shedding the training wheels. I'm going to take where I started with this and now go deeper on its own. It could be a good
Or
starting
you will
point.
ask someone else to help you with a specific clip that
Right.
it didn't perform as well as you'd expect. Of course, that will happen. I mean, it's a machine, right? It will do a really good job, but at one point, as it's available to you, you'll ask someone else. Again, I think it's also really an educational experience that's fun, because for the better part of it, you'll just get a fantastic result. But along the way, you'll learn a couple of things about audio workflows too.
That's important.
And as we expect many more people to tap into that, we've added something else. Just mentioning it, Media Encoder is now really available across the pipeline. So I already mentioned for the proxy workflows, we brought that to Media Encoder too.
Right.
But if your last step in the pipeline is to do those fixes and just making everything a little better in Audition, you don't need to come back to Premiere Pro anymore, because we can now send it into the Media Encoder queue directly. So it makes just for a faster process wherever you take a closer look.
Faster workflow all around. Cool. How about After Effects? Character Animator. I love what I see with Character Animator. This isn't an official release of Character Animator. It still seems like you guys are kind of ramping up to that, but pretty cool stuff that you got going on.
Let's talk about both, actually.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's start with Character Animator, because it's so much fun.
Yeah, it is.
And I highly recommend, for those who haven't seen anything yet, what Character Animator is or does. The quick explanation is, it breathes life into animation done in Illustrator or Photoshop. So you kind of prepare your characters, and then you bring it into a Character Animator, and you can do what we call rigging. So you decide what's happening with facial expression. So you kind of map to what's in that puppet to a real character. A person rig.
person with
You
a
make-
camera on them.
You make it a person.
Yeah.
Then you put a camera on yourself, or the person you want to breathe life into that character. Microphone too, so we get really proper lip sync with it.
Nice.
It makes it very easy, which is fascinating to see, in a sense that this is not necessarily changing the way people are doing animation in general, where they have been doing it for many years. This is actually bringing animation into parts of the business where it was prohibitive to even have any.
Sure.
And you might actually have seen that this year on a couple of TV shows. All of a sudden they're very nice and funny and funky characters, and they're actually speaking to a topic that pretty much surfaced the hour before that show. How can that be? Animation usually was a bit more complex than that. So we're even taking it to the degree where we've seen some customers doing a live show with it. You could. That's the cool thing about it. We put it out there and our customers are doing amazing things with it. New with it this year, we noticed that the rigging, couple of things, but the one that I find to be most important, the rigging process, as people generate new characters now pretty much on a daily basis, the rigging was a bit too tedious on text basis. You have a typo and immediately a lip is no longer a lip because you just had an F instead of a P because you hit the wrong button on the keyboard. Right, we all do it. I do it all the time. So now there is actually a visual interface for that to do the rigging, next to many updates that just add a lot of convenience as we're learning from our customers what makes them work faster in the application.
Nice.
After Effects.
Yes.
As you asked about.
Touch on that.
One of my favorite applications, because I'm always impressed with what our customers can do with something that seems so overwhelming to begin with.
Yes, it really does. I've had many times where I'm like, I'm going to make this work. I can do this. I'm capable. And it's so deep.
If I see our customers' presentations at the booth, I've been with Adobe for a couple of years and in the business for a number of years.
Yeah.
I never stop being impressed
I know.
with how creative you can put to work a tool that you thought had one purpose. But speaking of which, we noticed over the last couple of years that After Effects is catering to so many different purposes, as you can creatively kind of almost remap the interface and what it's doing to the specific task at hand. It wasn't so much about new features anymore. Don't get me wrong. I think we probably have a backlog for 10 years of more features for After Effects, but it turned out that our customers were much more interested, speaking of the 4K, 6K, 8K ways, to look into ways of getting more performance into this environment, because it's actually tough to begin with. There's so much in processing that needs to happen in this environment. So any time you can save, even on the way in, that's time well spent for us in terms of investment. So that's exactly what we're doing. So there have been improvements for the last couple of releases. This time we focused on ingest because we kind of noticed people have too much caffeine in their system, and we're guilty of making them walk to the shop getting some coffee, because ingest of a large amount of footage
takes time.
It takes a lot of time. So we looked very closely at every little detail there is to improve that process. So what used to be minutes is now pretty much seconds. So it's a 10x improvement. That's no small feat in that particular environment. So that's a great performance improvement. Similar improvements, really great performance improvements on the caching, and in particular on the preview within After Effects with synced audio. So across the board, there are lots of details. Won't bore you with them. The important message for us to bring across is there is a lot more speed there. So good for your caffeine levels, but even better, progress bars are not so much in your face
Absolutely,
anymore.
and I think that's a big. I mean, everybody's striving to make the most out of their time, and there's nothing quite like having that creative, being in the creative mind, but being forced to kind of slow down when you want to keep moving. And so this just helps people be better at their jobs or better.
I think most people would say make technology go out of the way.
Yeah.
That's pretty much a good description for this.
Excellent. I love what you guys are doing. I love the Creative Cloud suite and just kind of the software as a service aspect in general. We kind of have to wrap things up, but one just kind of final question. You guys kind of switched to the software as a service model, I think it's 3 years ago now. And it really seems like, and I don't know if it's Adobe specifically, but it really seems like there's a movement now in this creative software's world towards this. Do you guys think that maybe you had a part in setting a trend here?
I'd probably be the wrong person to ask. You might want to put a customer up here and say whether or not that did set a trend for them. Generally speaking, I think for us, it's been a great ride because we have so many more people using our products because they're so accessible via Creative Cloud. Also, if you look at the business model for our customers, not for us, I'm really focusing on that because I think that's all that matters really. It's so much easier to add seats. It's so much easier actually to even get started. If you think about the amount of money a smaller group of people getting started with a production shop would have had to put down up front instead of the monthly payment. So I think wherever we look today, and the customers we're talking to who had concerns about that in the very beginning. It's been a great ride for them as much as it's now a very great ride for us. And you're right, we see many more companies adopting that, and of course that's fantastic because it puts those conversations out of the way where you actually couldn't update your products in between major releases with new features. That, if you look at aside, if you not take a closer look at any of the business implications, serving our customers with features when they need them, that seems to be the major benefit. And to my mind, that's also why so many companies are doing it. It's just a way better way of serving our clients with the velocity in the industry, with new things surfacing. It's almost like you have to do it. By the way, as you said, software as a service, one thing we didn't touch on is that we're not only doing products, we also have fantastic services. And one of the services would be Adobe Stock. And that's now really tightly integrated with Premiere Pro and After Effects, for example. Actually, across the board, you'll find that with other Adobe products as well. But here at NAB, we're specifically talking about the integration that we expanded greatly. So, have filtered search. You can imagine, again, After Effects, pretty good example. You might be looking for a background plate. You might be looking for actual footage. You might be looking for graphics. And all of that is on the 50+ million assets on Adobe Stock. So it's a great mixture of everything, but the filtered search allows you to go very into detail with what you need to go after. You can then get a preview of it, go for as many as you'd like. It will be with your project. Once you're decided on a particular take or shot, it's one click to actually purchase, but even better, you don't need to swap anything, you don't need to manage that process. It will actually immediately switch to the resolution you acquired.
Very nice.
And so it really nicely integrates with the process. We'll even badge if you already have purchased something in case you forgot that half a year ago you needed something with that nice sunset over the beach. Oh, there it is again. I'm going to use that because I already paid for it.
Right. Yep, and it's already integrated. I think that's a key component for not having to manage it after the fact. It just works. I love it. Excellent stuff. I'm really excited about Adobe's kind of updates regularly. Always some cool stuff to look forward to. Patrick Palmer from Adobe. Really appreciate you coming to the stage and talking to us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's been
a great show.
It's been our pleasure. All right, and all of this handiwork will be edited with Premiere. Maybe not with some of the VR functionality, but you never know. Someday soon, possibly.
I'm here with Michael Bice. He's the CEO of Mobile Viewpoints. Tell us a little bit about your product.
Yeah, we're making a lot of products for live contribution solutions for consumers, but all the way for professionals in the television business. And the most interesting at the moment is using your iPhone as a live contribution solution. So anywhere there is an event, you get live on television from your iPhone with our app.
So for citizen journalists?
Yes, totally, yeah.
Okay, people trying to take my job, for example.
Yeah, for example, yes. Yeah, but they are not that professional. But if there's an event happening or a disaster, you can invite those customers to get online with you on your TV station.
How has it worked in real life so far?
In real life, it is that people in TV stations can draw a circle on a map, and all phones within that map circle get a push message. Do you want to get live because there's an event happening? Do you want to get live on our TV station? And if they swipe, then automatically the app starts and sending video.
So the video comes from the citizens to the person with the app?
Yes, right.
So, and it's available now?
Yes, it's available now in the App Store. And you look for Web Streamer, you can download, sign up via your Twitter account, and you can see yourself already live on YouTube straight away. And after that, you can sign up at your local TV station, for example, or your local internet channel.
And so does it go just one way? It doesn't go from me, if I'm the central person with the app, it doesn't go from me to them, it just goes from them to me?
Not yet, but that's potentially possible in the future. But we now type text back, so you can receive text the whole time from the central. Do this, do that, can you look better, can you make the image sharper, those type of things.
So something like Facebook Live or Periscope, how does it differ from those?
We do adaptive video encoding, so if you walk around and the bandwidth available goes up and down, and our encoder follows that closely in the iPhone, so you don't get hicks and freezes. While with Periscope you see straight away freezes and stops and black frames appearing when conditions change. You walk, for example, in a parking lot.
So just a little more professional than something.
Yeah, it's really focusing on professional stuff. The BBC uses our app for all their journalists. They make a custom app for them.
So we were talking a little bit before that this has already been used in a real life situation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we saw live images coming from Brussels on the metro station bombing a month ago. So also people walking on the street with all covered in blood from an iPhone. Quality was not great, but it was live news.
And yeah, that's great. It added to the story. People
added to the story. RTL was the user in this case in Belgium, so they really loved to have live footage straight away from somebody they don't even know actually, just an off-the-shelf consumer.
So are big networks using this, or is this mostly for smaller operations?
Both. BBC uses it as the first thing for the journalists, so they can get live straight away when there's something. But also it is for small TV stations a very low cost attractive thing to get viewers live on TV.
There are a few ways that you could find out what's going on at NAB 2016 here in Las Vegas. You could walk the show floor and talk to every vendor. You could maybe speak to one of the NAB execs and find out what they've seen. Or you could go to Panasonic, one of the biggies here at the show. They've always got their fingers on the pulse of the broadcast world. And I am here speaking with Steve Cooperman. He is the Senior Product Manager at Panasonic, who's going to do just that, share the knowledge about NAB. Steve, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, the first thing we do have to mention is this booth that LiveView has created for us is loaded with Panasonic gear. So not only do we have the two big stand-up cameras on our tripods, but anyone's been watching has seen Brian, the cranky hippo Burnett, do some fancy footwork with your PTZs. What are these?
Yeah, these are awesome. Yeah, mounted up above and to the side, we have our AW HE 130s. And as our advertising said, these are the best, literally the best PTZs out there. For years, we've been incredibly successful at Panasonic with integrated pan-tilt zooms for education, for corporate environments, for house of worship, for many different markets. But what we've noticed in the last couple of years or so is that we have very high quality video, and then when we came out with the HE 130 about a year ago, it stepped it up even further. So more and more customers are taking advantage of that technology for live events such as this, concerts, news production, sports, mounting cameras on dugouts. Reality television is a really big thing as well for these cameras. And not only are they video cameras, but also, like on your laptop next to you, they provide the ability to stream back to a laptop or a tablet or a mobile device for viewing of the content, almost like somebody might do in a security environment, but in a true professional production type environment.
We did get a chance to play with some PTZs when we first set up the studio, and they weren't Panasonic. They told us that they were really, really good, and they ended up not being what we wanted. The resolution was never quite there. There was a bit too much lag in the control channel, and I couldn't see myself using that PTZ day in and day out. But our engineers here have been incredibly impressed with the force multiplying effect that you get with a PTZ. It's a different environment in which we live, and you have smaller crews, and the ability to change our angles on 3 of our cameras at any given time, it's huge for us. I would assume that's the market you're going for. You're going for, again, the house of worship or the smaller studio that wants a camera that can actually act like 3 or 4 different cameras.
Well, there's that, but again, like I said, reality television, some of these shows could have 40, 50, 60 cameras lined up in different places. Sometimes they're covered by rocks, they're outside or they're integrated into the sets. Meeting rooms, meeting rooms is a traditional thing where there's, many different pan-tilt zoom cameras in that particular marketplace. But when you think about it, and you mentioned some of these things, you don't just need the quality, but you want to have a smooth zoom when you have an operator operating it, or it'll be juddery. So those are some of the key things. What we've done in the last couple of years as well is we've integrated with streaming right from the camera to go across networks, working with some companies like Wowza that have a platform to deliver it across those networks. Or here at the show, which is, you mentioned LiveView, obviously, it's pretty cool. We're all of the outputs of these various cameras, whether there are P2 shoulder mount cameras or there are integrated PTZs like the HE 130, are going to the new tech and then being outputted to the LiveView, the LU 700. And that's obviously another new awesome workflow where they're encoding this, and we are in the field right now, even though we're at NAB, and encoding that LiveView, encoding that content, and sending it off through the bonded cellular system to send it through the network. So it is an awesome new unique workflow, and I think up to this point, and the LiveView guys obviously are the experts there, but that was being used more for those ENG news kind of crews. But now you could see with the PTZs, it's being used more for live productions and different sort of productions. So it opens up a lot of unique production opportunities for our customers.
Well, it is a whole new world, even for an organization like TWiT that grew up on the internet and grew up using less expensive equipment. The ability to walk into a space, maybe set up 3 PTZ cameras, have the new tech and have the live view, and have an instant on-location studio
that has every bit the quality of the studio we have back in San Francisco.
Yep.
It's different. It's different.
High mobility, high quality.
Yeah. All right, now let's talk a little bit about some of the news items that maybe our audience don't hear too much because they're used to hearing about the prosumer side and the consumer side. If we walk over to the Panasonic booth, it is an NAB dreamland. You've got everything from these PTZ cameras to the handhelds all the way up to the broadcast quality and the cinema quality cameras. Tell me a little bit about what Panasonic has developed over the last year.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And so what we've been talking about right now is basically 1/3 of our booth, the PTZ systems, part of our IP streaming workflow. On the opposite side of the booth is our cinema. And Panasonic for years has been, highly successful in the market, again, of AV cameras, E&G cameras, broadcast news. Cinema, about a year and a half ago, we released the VariCam 35, which is a revolutionary camera, 4K native camera, with a unique technology, a dual ISO technology, which literally enables the camera to almost operate as if it has two film stocks. Back in February in Hollywood, we announced, we introduced the VariCam LT, somewhat smaller camera, which is, again, it's a native 4K camera sharing the same Super 35mm sensor as the VariCam 35, but smaller size, lighter weight, lower price point. And we started shipping it last month. Now here at NAB, we have tremendous interest in the VariCam LT. I'm hearing it from everyone. We did something we've never done before. We have a 4K theater in our booth where we have video that was shot on either the VariCam 35 or the LT, more of cinematic or episodic television type content, generally acquired in 4K. But we have that, and in the last 3 days, last 2 days, now we're on day 3, we've been, you can see I've been here for a while. We've had ASC, American Cinematography Society, DPs there, presenting their works and discussing it. Guys like Roberto Schaefer and Frank Princey and Michael Fitzmaurice today and Dejan Djordjevic yesterday, but major DPs showing their work, discussing it, which has been bringing in many people to look at the content. So it's been very, very exciting. Been a good show so far. Very, very busy show.
We like busy shows. Busy shows means we get more toys to look at.
Yes.
Steve, I want to ask you a question that I think you are in a unique position to answer.
Hopefully.
Because Panasonic has such a large offering, because you have so many products in so many different areas, you get a view of the industry that you won't get at a startup or a smaller booth that maybe does one thing really, really well. What are the trends that you've seen this year? Where is NAB taking us? So if you go back to the boardroom after the show and they ask you, what should we be developing for 2017? What would you say?
Wow. Well, in terms of trends, and that's what's interesting, is we're dealing in multiple parts of the industry. But just what I was discussing in cinema, obviously there's a huge increase in interest in 4K. Whether customers are utilizing it today, they want to make sure that they're if you're shooting video for a movie or television, unless you're incredibly rich or that's just a hobby, generally speaking, that's your job, and your content is your money, and you want to make sure that you can make money off of it this year with your current deliverable as well as next year. So 4K clearly, even if you shoot 4K today, deliver 2K, you could master it in 4K tomorrow. HDR, high dynamic range content, that was a big buzzword at the CES show about 3 months ago, and now more and more customers are talking to us about that. Interestingly enough, cameras like the VariCam, because they have 14.5 stops of dynamic range, our standard, where you're shooting your content, it already is HDR. We got to go back and remaster it. But so they're talking about that. So obviously, downstream, in the future, more products that support that amount of range, more complementary workflow products. Sometimes they want smaller cameras. It's a tough conundrum that customers always want smaller. Smaller, less expensive. And like with the VariCam LT, but obviously at Panasonic, quality is really important. So when we're talking with our Japanese and U.S. engineering team and executives, that's some of the things that are coming up, and finding ways to make new and unique technologies that are smaller and more mobile without skimping on technology. Other trends you mentioned here at the beginning is clearly mobile production, utilization of integrated pan tilt zooms for remote production or for smaller production crews, which interestingly enough has led to just an enormous increase in production. Maybe the crews are smaller, but there's not less production, there's incredibly more production. Clearly taking advantage of common, mobile devices, or the technologies such as, 4G streaming, 4G LTE, or, live views obviously taking advantage of bonded cellular to transmit a file-based content, or in the case of our own PTZs, sometimes you're just streaming directly from the device. So more of that. Studio cameras, we have 2 new studio cameras at NAB. One of them is 4K, the AK-UC 3000 4K studio camera. Interestingly enough, it shows a new trend where even though it's 4K and it's high resolution, generally speaking, people that are using 4K are using cinema kind of lenses, being that this is studio and for more of a broadcast, shooting sport, shooting concerts, it utilizes a 2/3 inch zoom type lenses, and which is pretty cool. So you get the high resolution, but you get the kind of zoom lens that you would be traditionally used to using in the field. So that's a new trend that we're seeing more of, and we've had incredible interest in our new 4K as well as our HC 5000 1080 240 frame a second overcrank HD studio camera, again for that part of the marketplace.
Very concise and very complete. Thank you. I mean, that should be the cheat sheet for anyone who maybe wasn't able to come to NAB. That's an incredibly good list of what was covered here at the show. We've been speaking with Steve Cooperman, Senior Product Manager at Panasonic. He has been taking us through some of the offerings that Panasonic has here at NAB 2016. Steve, if they wanted to find out more about what you did at NAB, more about what Panasonic has brought to all fields of broadcast, where should they go?
Let's see, our main website is www.panasonic.com/broadcast. That's where they could, see the various products, and off of there we have an NAB site as well.
We'll get back to our Day 4 coverage of NAB 2016, but first, let's take a break and thank the sponsor of this TWiT Live special, and it's Audible. Now, I love Audible. This is what I use pretty much every single day of the week. I have a long commute to work. I love long drives, and, well, sometimes I don't want to listen to talk radio. Sometimes I don't want to listen to music. Sometimes I want to open my mind with a good book, which is exactly what Audible lets you do. Now, Audible.com is the leading provider of audiobooks with more than 180,000 downloadable titles of all genres, including fiction, nonfiction, and periodicals. Now, just for our TWiT Live special audience, Audible wants to give you a free audiobook. For those who need 2 audiobooks to give Audible a try, today they're offering you their Platinum plan. That gives you 2 free audiobooks to try out and 2 book credits per month. It's a great deal for people who enjoy listening to audio programming. You also get free subscriptions to the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times daily audio programs. Now, if you're wondering what to do with your credits, I would suggest 2 books. First, this is a no-brainer for people who love science, The Martian by Andy Weir. That is an absolutely perfect book, which is even made better by the audiobook, which is even made better by the movie. If you love hard sci-fi, if you want to see a scenario that's not too far out from fact, well, The Martian is for you. Also, if you want something a bit more futuristic, try Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. That was my previous favorite book right before The Martian, and well, you just can't go wrong with something that's narrated by Will Wheaton. For more details and to get 2 audiobooks for free and their Platinum plan, go to audible.com/twit2. That's audible.com/twit2. And we thank Audible for their support of this TWiT Live special.
I am at the Leica booth, so all over the show we've been talking about the technology, the 4K, the HDR, all the innards, but you really can't do anything great without a lens, and of course, Leica, they're the experts and have been. So I'm here with Seth. Tell us a little bit where you're from, Seth.
We're based in Wetzlar, Germany, which is just outside of Frankfurt. I'm actually based in Los Angeles, so right in the heart of the cinema market.
And what's your job with Leica?
I'm the marketing director for all of the cinema products.
Awesome. So, what would you say? I know Leica has film cameras now. They have still cameras and video cameras. What's the most exciting thing for? I guess let's start with consumers who are, obviously prosumers. What's the most exciting thing right now from Leica?
Well, the most exciting thing is our newest camera, which is the Leica SL. It's a mirrorless full-frame camera that has full automatic functionality, a really beautiful zoom lens. It's perfect for people that do events or are shooting, magazine advertising things. It's just a beautiful professional camera.
And so, in terms of film cameras, I think it's so interesting that is coming back. And why do you think right now people are interested in film when digital is so easily accessible?
Well, I think part of it is an aesthetic feeling as far as the quality of the image goes. You really can't do black and white any better than film. I mean, we have a beautiful black and white camera, but there's something tactile about film as well. And there's the feeling of a film camera, the shutter. It's a visceral kind of thing that takes you back to, usually for people, to a previous time in their life.
Right. And it's something that, an Instagram filter won't do.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
She said Instagram filter, like, we're done here.
We do have cameras that have, Bluetooth connectivity, so you can send photos from the camera directly to your phone for social media sharing. We have a wide gamut, but our film cameras are still manufactured, they're still sold. We still have people coming in with, M3s and these old cameras from the 50s and 60s that are still working like tanks.
Okay, so I know that they're pricey and worth it, but what's a good starter camera for someone who's like, I want to make an investment, but what's like the lowest and fantastic thing that you can offer someone?
So we have a really powerful point-and-shoot camera, which is called the Deluxe. It has an extremely fast lens on it. It has HD and 4K recording capability, but it's a pocket-sized camera. It's a wonderful on-the-go camera, but if you want something that's kind of a little more professional, we have the Q, which is a full-frame camera with a fixed 28mm lens that creates just an absolutely gorgeous image, and it's lightweight. You can carry it all day long.
And so can you tell us anything about these cameras that we're standing in front of right now?
Sure. So the camera on the left there is the SL. That's the new mirrorless camera. It also does 4K and HD video. So we're showing it here with a PL mount to use cinema lenses. And we have a demo reel we're showing as well that was shot on cinema lenses. So it's a really powerful imaging tool for photography, but the video capability is quite remarkable. On the other side here, we have the Leica M camera, which is our traditional rangefinder camera. It's what Leica is known for. We invented the full-frame format over 100 years ago with a camera that has the exact DNA of this camera here.
And so can you tell us the price of these?
Yeah, the SL comes in at $7,450, and the M is in the mid $6,000 range.
I am an audio geek. I'm an audio nerd. I love this stuff, and I'm so excited to speak with JP Baudouin of, both Headspace Studio as well as Felix and Paul Studios. How's it going?
Great, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Here. It is really great to have you here. I love it when I get the chance to talk with someone who is entrenched in the audio production world as you are.
Well, it's exciting to hear that because audio doesn't get much attention, right, these days?
It's true. It always kind of seems to be, shuffled into the corner, not nearly as important, yet audio influences what you see. If it's not good audio, it actually looks, the visuals look worse.
Correct, and everybody seems to agree that audio is 50% of, either a film or a VR experience, but still it gets 5% of the attention. But you know, that's what it is. You don't get into audio to get to be out there,
to get recognized, to get famous, all that kind of stuff. So, okay, so to give people a little bit of a background on both Headspace, your work at Headspace Studio, and then of course Felix and Paul Studios. This is about immersive audio, and specifically immersive audio in the context of virtual reality applications. Tell us a little bit about kind of the work you're doing specifically with Headspace.
Sure. So, it all started with Felix and Paul, the individuals. Been a long time we've been exploring immersion, either in cinema, building 3D mixes as well, and 3D cinema. And then when Palmer Luckey did his first Kickstarter with what would become the DK1, the Oculus Rift DK1. We got into that, and Felix and Paul were actually able to reconstruct in full stereoscopy the full sphere and get that complete immersion in VR. And I had to find a way to match that high quality with audio. So we started exploring, and it's been going on for 3 years. Been partnering with Oculus for content. So all content being produced by Oculus for live action is done by Felix and Paul.
Excellent.
And at some point, I really interested in exploring the medium, so I think it's only fair to work with other directors as well. So that's why we partnered and founded Headspace to be able to work with other directors.
So it sounds like the work that you're doing with Headspace obviously targeted at this industry, at the immersive audio for VR, but you're not just keeping it for yourself, you're not just keeping it locked into Felix and Paul Studios. Anybody can be a partner. That totally opens up the potential for you guys.
Actually, I think that any company that's into VR right now has a duty to make sure this medium gets the attention it deserves, because it's not any day that you see a new medium happening. The last time it was cinema and VR. If people have tried it, at least very high quality cinematic VR, and that's one thing we can talk about later on. This is about cinematic VR, so it's film. We do a bit of CGI live action, but it's really a new medium. So you gotta think about what that workflow means, but artistically as well. Does it need a new vocabulary? And since it's totally different, right? So there's R&D to be done, exploration on all fronts.
How, as we're talking here, VR, the concept of VR and kind of the overarching view of VR has been around for a very long time. This particular year seems to be a really crazy turning point for virtual reality, and just the thought of strapping a goggle to your face and being transported to another world. Have you seen that much, or as much rather, interest in the audio side from the immersive standpoint as people are paying attention to kind of the immersion in video?
I think as soon as people actually try an experience where audio is of extremely high quality, spatialized, and there's a lot of care and effort put into it, there's no turning back.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Because the important thing with VR is first of all, if you want to deliver, people always talk about presence, that sort of elusive magic thing that's called presence. It's kind of a black art right now. The way to get there, one of the ways is to deliver very high quality immersion. And if you only deliver perfectly stereo stitch visuals, but your audio is stereo, and you talk to me and I turn around and your voice suddenly follows me, it doesn't work, right? Yeah. Things have to be where they should be in space, and that allows you to bring the person on that threshold of suspension of disbelief and actually crossing that line, and then that becomes magic, right? Then you're totally transported.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I can't even imagine. I'm a musician. I mix my own music. I play around with Pro Tools.
I started that way too.
And I feel pretty competent in that realm. But when you're talking about 360-degree audio that follows you everywhere, there's just so many components. I don't even understand where you start from kind of a production standpoint or process standpoint. How do you tackle this?
Technically, you mean? So there are two components. Obviously, you stated edge tracking, which is fundamental, right? At least for the spatialized audio part in that experience. But there's also the elevation component, and that's fundamentally different to anything that we've seen before in audio. You would get, surround, and if you get the high-end theater experience with Dolby Atmos, so that kind of thing, it's great, but it's nothing like in real life. When you walk towards me, I hear your footsteps down there, and I hear you talk at that elevation. And you need to be able to translate that into VR, or else you've got what I always say about our walking foot and walking mouse. You know, if you've got that, you're pulled out of the experience. It doesn't work.
Right.
So you need to find the way to capture that information, and that's possible with a technology that, funny enough, has been around since the 70s called ambisonics.
Okay.
Now, ambisonics can be a very opaque audio format, but it's becoming more and more accessible. So there's a way to capture information with those kind of microphones, and then you import that audio, but you need to be able to have it in post-production and you know, process it you would with normal
Right.
you know, mono, stereo,
tools.
or exactly.
Yes.
So you need new tools, but obviously there's if you're doing cinematic VR, you want that high quality movie sound. So you want to hear those dialogues. You want to be able to add Foley sound design like you would do in any movie. So it's a combination of that spatial sphere of sound that you're able to capture, and then point source, like we still use lav mics. The hard thing is that you have to take those point sources and reposition them in space. So if you've got a character that's moving around the viewer, you have to trace all that movement, and so it's...
And go ahead and add in maybe more ambience depending on where they happen to be versus standing right up next to you where the ambience is really
Absolutely.
pushed back and
Yeah,
you hear
yeah.
them fully in front.
Correct.
Now, ambisonics, is that also what encapsulates the aspect of like the fact that our ears are on the side of our, the sides of our head, obviously, separated by all of this mass, so that sound doesn't necessarily hit our ears at equal times. You know, it's a little filtered by the time sound coming this way goes here and comes around to the other
So
side
the
of the head.
magic word you're looking for,
Yes, I know I'm
Jason,
missing
is
the word.
binaural audio.
There we go.
You have it.
There we
And that's a very good question, and I think we need to disambiguate that term. So no, ambisonics has nothing to do with binaural audio. Obviously, you can apply binaural processing at rendering time.
Right.
So, as you stated, your head, the torso, the shape of your canine, and all these things influence on the way you perceive location, and so we apply those filters at rendering time. So if
Got it.
I'm in that position and I basically, since it's consumed over headphones, if I give you that stereo mix and at that precise moment you should be in front of me, so I will have if that was recorded with a lav mic, for instance, I will hear you exactly in that direction, and then I will apply HRTF filtering so you really get that binaural real life experience. And then of course it's okay if you're localized, but I need to put you in that space with that reverb quality and so forth.
So we're talking obviously a lot about kind of how this sound is treated when you're in the visor experience with headphones over the top of your ears, but there's also immersive audio in kind of at home, watching a movie in your cinema room application. How is processing and working with immersive audio for VR different from that environment?
It's very different, right? The main thing is that when you're either in a theater or home cinema, it's immersive, but it's an experience. You don't
Fixed.
get the real it's fixed, and you don't get the real perspective that's just built for you. Where in VR, it's a POV medium, and you get that premium positioning, localization experience, right? So it's a very personal experience. Doesn't mean that the theater experience or home theater experience is not interesting, right? It's just something else. And now they're coming with Dolby Atmos for home, and I believe Auro 3D and those kind of immersive audio for home solutions now give you at least elevation. They got speakers on the top, so it's totally different. But what we're interested in is to be able to produce audio that is output independent, right? So if you're able to mix in a way that doesn't matter what kind of input, if it's either binaural headphone in the end, or if you need a 7.1 or 11.1 setup, if it's possible to carry all this information,
Scale it based on the
exactly.
application.
And that's happening. The next broadcast standards will bring that. So channel-based audio, object-based audio, that's another very interesting subject, and higher order ambisonics together. You can build that output especially for the medium you're watching it in.
Fascinating. Okay, so we have a few more minutes, and I know that there are a lot of things that I'm sure we haven't touched on. Object, based audio is one of those. Tell me a little bit about that.
Object-based audio can be, I think the easiest way to understand it is if you need to deliver content at, let's say, a live broadcast, but you need to have 3 different languages, for instance. If you want English, Spanish, you could have the English object, or you can have the Spanish object, for instance. Now, that's a very easy concept to grasp, but you can also do, like when you mix a movie, you could have that object that's moving in space as an really as an audio object with metadata, and it gets repositioned in real time. That's another way to use it.
Man, this stuff it just gets more and more complicated and complex. It's crazy.
It does. And you're touching an important subject. This is why we need standards.
Absolutely.
This is why we need to democratize the platforms for streaming, for VR at least. I think that's the one of the most important things, because if we don't have that, then you'll have to basically recreate your mix from scratch for every platform, which doesn't make sense, right? From a timing perspective, I mean, you can't take 3 months when it should take only 1 month to mix a project, and cost, so it's not effective. So the industry has to work together and find common grounds.
Is that happening? I mean, is there anything that the industry by and large is leaning towards as a standard, or it's just still so early that it's kind of the Wild West at this point?
It's the Wild West, but everybody understands that. And if it's too complicated, it's going to be hard to produce very high-end content, because it's going to add on the production costs, and it's just going to be very complicated, and the consumer will be confused. And so everybody seems to understand that, but right now, of course, everyone's trying to push their technology, because everyone's convinced that they got the best technology, and which is normal, but we're going to get there. We're like a web design circa, I don't know, 1993, where now it's web standards are more implemented.
Right. I think final question here. I could talk about this for days, but we have to move on. But I think this is what I want to know. Really, is where this all leads. What is, in fact, actually beyond where it all leads? What is beyond immersive audio? Do we even understand what kind of the next frontier is in this technology space?
Well, that's nobody's ever asked me that.
Sorry.
Is there anything beyond immersive audio?
Because I feel like not very long ago, immersive audio was hard to comprehend, and now it's here, and it's about to become, in some ways, mainstream to a certain degree.
I think it will have to follow the medium. Nobody knows where VR wants or is going towards what it's going to evolve. AR is going to be there as well, augmented reality. So I think we're going to look at there's going to be interesting questions like when you're in AR. So if we're in reality, but there is an added layer of virtual content, we're going to have to mix additional audio content with the real life audio content. That's going to be an interesting problem to tackle.
Sure.
But I think if you get to really well-made immersive audio, it's such a compelling experience. We still, have a lot to work to do to get there at an industry level. It's already a great goal to achieve.
Yeah, fascinating. I love it, and I can't wait to see your handiwork and well, more importantly, listen to your handiwork.
People should go on the Oculus store if they have either an Oculus Rift or an Oculus Samsung Gear VR headset. That's where you can get most of our content.
And so what kind of content are people going to find from you there when they go looking?
Recently, we just did an incredible piece with LeBron James called Striving for Greatness.
I saw that on your site.
That's a great piece. It's really fun to watch, and it has mass appeal. And we did another piece called Introduction to Virtual Reality, which was commissioned by Oculus and Samsung, which is bringing you in the middle of the Africa, with elephants. You're in a yurt in Mongolia. You're with the dinosaur, the Jurassic World experience we did. So I think it's pretty exciting.
Fantastic. So JP Baudouin, co-founder of head of sound at Headspace Studio, also director of sound technology for Felix and Paul Studios. Can people follow you online? Do you have like a Twitter account that people can kind of keep up on what you're doing?
I think that the best place is Facebook. I do have a Twitter account for Headspace, but Facebook. And if we have people that are listening right now that are really into audio, we created a group on Facebook called Spatial Audio in VR, and it's a very active community, so I invite them to join.
Excellent. Definitely check it out. JP, it's a pleasure talking with you
Jason.
today. Thank you so much for, I don't know, just making the audio nerd in me very happy. I can't wait to hear this stuff for myself.
I'm here with Phong Vanel at the Epson booth. And full disclosure, Epson is a sponsor of the TWiT network, but they sponsor us with their printers, and we are not here to talk about printers. We are here to talk about beautiful projectors. Thanks for talking to me, Phong. So what do we have here? Tell me about what this is.
Hi, thank you. So I don't know if you know about our current line of projector series, but this is the Pro G7000 series, successor line to the Pro G6000 series, which will be end-of-lifing in the next few months. The G7000 series boasts have a couple benefits over the current series. Number one, it's going to be brighter, between 5,500 and 8,000 lumens. Number two, motorized lenses, which is a huge benefit over the current manual lenses. And then also the third feature is the 4K enhancement feature, which does two things. Number one, it accepts a 4K signal. And number two, it enhances 1080p and WUXGA signals to a better resolution. So I don't know if you have time for a demo really quickly. Right now, if you look at the board, this is on WUXGA. I'm going to change it over to 4K enhancement. And you can see the text gets much brighter, much more clear.
Yeah, you can definitely read it. So you said it's 4K enhancement, but not 4K. And so can you explain a little bit about what the difference is between 4K enhancement and 4K?
Right, so it's not true 4K, and true 4K projectors are going to be much more expensive because they're native 4K. This is a native WUXGA panel, and we're upscaling it to give you more pixels on screen. You're basically getting half of the native 4K resolution.
So what's the price point for this one?
Price point, depending on resolution and brightness, you're looking at anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000.
So if I were going to say, oh, well, I'd rather have a 4K, what would I have to pay for a 4K projector?
You're going to pay about $20,000.
So that's different.
It's definitely worth it.
All right, so up here, there's some. This screen is beautiful. Up here, this is a projector. Where is this coming from?
So this is a 200-inch screen that we have going, and it's being projected off our 25,000 lumen WUXGA laser projector. And we're really excited. This is our flagship product that we're announcing and launching this year at NAB. And the product model is the Pro L 25,000U. And it comes with its own set of lenses, 4K compatible lenses. And the main feature for this L25000 unit is it's built for rental and staging. It's built for permanent install, and it's built for a lot of additional features, including a completely sealed optical engine. So if you put it up in an event that has a lot of dust and dirt or fog and smoke, then the sealed optical engine is going to stay clean through all that. You don't have to clean it every day. It has a 20,000-hour electrostatic filter, so you don't have to clean that every day. And then it also has a 20,000-hour life on the optical engine and the laser light source. So you know that you're getting performance for as long as you need it with this 25,000 unit out.
So who is this ideal for? Who's the right customer for this?
Our our target audience for this is large concert and events. So for, like U2 concerts, Maroon 5, those guys want the huge displays behind them, and this is what this can provide. The maximum screen size for this is 500 inches, but you can tile these to make them much larger. The projector actually has a built-in camera that can auto-calibrate its own image, and also if you network all the projectors together, it can identify itself within the matrix and calibrate the image to be one continuous image through the matrix. So we're really excited all the features that we put into the L25000.
We're speaking with Carl Peitel, the Director of Industry Strategy at Dell. Carl, first I have to ask you, What is the Director of Industry Strategy?
Thanks for meeting with me this morning. So what I do at Dell, I work in our precision workstation business, and workstations are professional clients that creators and scientists and designers use to do their work, to do professional work on professional applications. And as Director of Industry Strategy, what I do is I look after how we serve a variety of industries. So media and entertainment is a very important industry for us. We have people that do video editing, video capture, a lot of very complex things for broadcasting, people that do animation, motion pictures, television, broadcast, music, a lot of different areas of media and entertainment. We also serve the engineering market, architecture market, the energy segment, healthcare and life sciences, finance, and a variety of industries. And so what we really need to do, since we're serving these professionals that need really a tool to maximize their job and have performance and reliability that meets their requirements in each industry, is understand their requirements, work with the right partners in the right ecosystem, because there are a lot of people involved, a lot of software, a lot of hardware, a lot of services, and make sure that we bake that into the product, we get the right requirements. And when we go to the market, that we go to the market with the right partners and enable the tools in a way that work very effectively, because we're dealing with a lot of technology, and the technology, like I mentioned, is a professional tool. There's a lot of sophistication. We want to make sure that our customers have a great experience and a great support experience.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's very easy to fall in the oft-reported doom and gloom of the desktop. The desktop is dying. All the numbers show that the desktop sales are declining. But I think a lot of people don't realize that when you quote those doom and gloom numbers, the desktop apocalypse, you're really talking about consumer level PCs. And yes, there's sort of a shift. There's a movement between there. But in terms of workstations, in terms of the enterprise, in terms of an industry that really does need a workstation, not a fast computer, but a workstation, that part of the market is actually growing. It's been growing the last couple of years as these companies, like those at NAB, realize I need something that's custom built for my application.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have a very healthy business both on desktop and on mobile workstations. And what we find is there's always new things that enter the market, and VR is very popular here at NAB. We can talk about VR. That's another kind of new wave that gives professionals a tool to get their job done or make more compelling content. And a workstation class product allows them to do that. And when we look across all industries, we're finding that more and more, I mean, it's when you look at a shampoo bottle or a car, those are all designed on a workstation by an engineer, and it's all done on computer. And more, even those processes are being refined, where they're even relying more and more, if you can imagine, on a computer than even they used to, from concept to manufacturing, really to recycling and everything else. The same thing in media and entertainment is more and more people are relying on those tools. And one of the popular things that we hear from our customers in media and entertainment is, when you guys give us a more powerful tool, it doesn't change our deadline. It allows us to be more creative or more iterative. And there's still an insatiable appetite for performance and reliability. So no one's told us, oh, we're happy with you just keeping the bar where it's at. You guys can stop, and we'll buy a few machines. There are always creative ways to use the tools that we provide in a new way. And like I mentioned, creators have never told us that they've changed their deadlines because they have more performance. It just allows them to be more creative.
You do have a very unique perspective here, because speaking of the tools, you get to see what the vendors, what the creators are asking for. After they've filmed all their content, after they've directed their last scene, after they've blocked out their last bit of video, they somehow have to process that. They have to turn that into a narrative, they have to turn it into a video, they have to turn it into a story that can be consumed. And so they go through you. They go through the people who are actually making the workstations that, as you say, will allow them to be more creative, more iterative, to do more before the deadline. So in that position, have you seen any trends, any unique movements in the industry as it pertains to NAB that maybe might tell us which way the creative individuals are actually going?
Yeah, no, I think this year virtual reality or VR is, is sort of the theme of the show in some sense. At least everywhere I'm turning, our customers are talking about it. We've had great thing about NAB, it's a great opportunity to meet with customers and meet with partners. We've had a lot of chances to do that, certainly before, but here, most of my questions are about virtual reality. And it provides new opportunities for creators. It's truly a transformative moment. And what's interesting is we've actually been involved in VR for a number of years in a lot of different ways. So, whether it be stereo content that's more immersive, whether it be in other industries, in engineering, we have people that are designing airplanes and automobiles. They've been using VR caves at their headquarters to do product reviews because although they do prototypes, it's much cheaper to do a digital prototype and allow people from a product review standpoint to evaluate digital prototypes. So we've been involved in VR for a while, but it's really, the technology is come to a point where it can be democratized. And what I say, this is kind of what I say on the engineering side, when we think about caves, you can bring a cave to every cube. And so when we think about media and entertainment, it's becoming democratized, so more people have access to this immersive experience. And that brings a lot of opportunity, but a lot of questions as well. And we're really just at the beginning of seeing things. And from a content perspective, you move from a framed storytelling environment that we've seen for many years to something that could be less curated an experience from a point of view standpoint. There's still ways to curate the content. People are experimenting with all sorts of different ways. And the feedback I'm getting from some of our customers and the people that are really immersed in it right now is they're experimenting with different ways. Do I curate the point of view? Do I not do that intentionally? And it has all sorts of ramifications for what you focus on in the capture process, in the stitching process, in the render process, and in the delivery of the content itself. Is the content one of those things that needs to be consumed over and over, or is it consumed once? So there are a lot of fascinating questions, and I think it's exciting. And there's a ton of refinement happening in technology and actually in the storytelling.
I think that's something that any experienced storyteller, any experienced content creator knows, which is if you replace one part of your workflow equation, be it the cameras or the workstations, the software that you're using, it affects all parts of the creative process, because now you realize, oh, hey, my workstation is 6 times more powerful than it used to be. So I can try some different shots and some different angles and some different effects that I would normally not do because I'm on a deadline. And as you mentioned, it really does sort of open up not just that rendering part, but it changes how you film, and it changes how you do post, and it changes how you set up shots. Let me ask you this. Thinking back to the last year, is there a specific type of feature or specific function that has been desired by your customers out of your workstations? Or is it just more power, more memory, more processor, more space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are a variety of features people want. Some are as simple as, we want to make sure that you have the right Type-C connections and things like that. But when we go back to this topic, which is probably, going back to VR, which has certain features, whenever we've seen a change like this, whether it be virtualization, whether it be stereo, whatever the transformation is, we've actually done things to help our customers. So we've set up, when virtualization came out, we set up a proof of concept center, a center of excellence to help customers do virtualization in their environment. And what we're seeing with VR is the standards are being created right now, and it's still, I would say, it's been until recently a science project. So on the consumer side, on the gaming side, XPS and Alienware came out with VR-ready configurations to give customers guidance, because what we want the customers to do is have a great experience, and we don't do that for a couple reasons. One is, of course, we want our customers to have a great experience, but we also want to make sure that this has legs, and we don't want out of the gate to people to be disappointed or have the wrong expectation or buy the wrong piece of technology so that they can't realize the promise of this. And what we did, so we introduced VR-ready configurations on the gaming side earlier in the year, and a few weeks ago we introduced VR-ready solutions for precision workstations. And what we did was we did a lot of testing. We worked with our partners, AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, our software partners, and we did a lot of testing, and we wanted to make sure that, there's a lot of different metrics people are looking at right now, and we're involved in a lot of different specifications that are being baked right now, but things like, are we getting 90 frames per second in VR content? And that's an important metric because there's a certain point where people, technology needs to not make people sick when they turn their head, that it feels immersive so that it doesn't feel kludgy. And we're experimenting with all those things. And when we think about content, especially on the professional side, there's an element of, does it bake into my workflow from a design standpoint? The product that I'm creating in my workflow, how does that look? So as a professional, I need to both create, I need to review and visualize what I created. That can be done either in VR or not in VR, and I think over time, it'll be done more and more within the VR environment. Today it's kind of a mix. It's kind of mixed because the software companies are starting to bake that in. But what customers really need right now is some guidance because it's so new. And so that's why we created a program to create VR-ready solutions. We introduced specifications for our tower workstations, and you mentioned some people have said, what's the future of the desktop? And when things like VR come along, it's very bright. And so if we give customers guidance so that they're buying the right system, they're having the right experience, they're able to actually deliver and have a professional tool that can be used, then it's really exciting for them. What we want to avoid is customers that rely on professional tools to get something that doesn't allow them to do that. Certainly, we don't want anybody to get sick. We don't want anybody to have a stutter experience. We want it to be truly immersive because once you sort of break presence in VR, then the magic's lost. It's sort of like, you're awakened from a dream, and that doesn't make the experience great. So VR is really about immersion, and we need that. We need the right platforms to deliver the right experience. And we're going to evolve this over time. So we're going to have, we have some customers that have, talked about different ways they're using VR, and we might refine how we look at this. We might have architects who just want to do very simple walkthroughs. Those requirements might be a little bit different than somebody that needs to do, very high action type of content creation and content review. And we might evolve the way we look at it. But right now, we want to make sure that we deliver the best experiences as available today. We work with HTC, we work with Oculus, we work with our graphics and technology partners, and we give people the right guidance so that they have the right tool.
I am here at the Epson booth, and full disclosure, Epson is one of TWiT's sponsors. Now, we have been talking about augmented reality, how it's the next big thing coming down the pipe. When are we going to see it? It's going to be amazing, but it's here. There's a lot of people in this field already with products out there that they're selling to people that people are using, and so I'm here with Eric at the Epson booth. Tell us a little bit about your augmented reality product.
Absolutely. So we're here at the show showing off our Moverio BT200 platform. So as you can see, it's a completely transparent display. So what we're doing is we're using our projection technology to be able to project a large floating image in your field of view. So the cool thing about this is that these AR glasses are being used for some really kind of cool applications. So here at NAB, being focused on the broadcast industry, we're showing off a drone application. So now a pilot that's flying their UAV out in the field can keep visual line of sight with their drone, but then also see what the camera sees at the same time. So it's nice because you basically get two views without taking your eye off the drone. So it really makes flying and not only safer, but more productive for the pilot.
So is this mostly for drone users who are really focused on filming and not like the drone racing community?
Yeah, it's definitely more focused on people who need to keep kind of line of sight with their drone, which would be more of the videography or photography crowd versus, say, the drone racing community.
Right, or someone that's just out flying their drone. So it's someone that really needs to see what they're shooting and making sure they're getting a good shot, and that's how they use these.
which is a great transition to the next solution that we're showing off. So one of the challenges that we've heard from videographers, particularly folks in the reality filming space, is they need their camera view, which typically would show up here with a fixed monitor. The challenge there is that when they're filming low, or if they're running in a certain direction, they're always having to look at their monitor. However, with your screen floating in front of you on a transparent display, you can be looking anywhere and be able to see what your camera is shooting. That way you're not going to trip over any stairs or hazards along the way. So we've actually, this solution has been quite well received by the members of the show here.
So you guys have had this product on the market for a while. How long has it been out there?
So the Moverio product, we launched them back in 2011 with the BT100, and we're continuing to iterate. So this is our second generation product, the BT200. It's 60% lighter and smaller than the first gen. And we actually announced the BT300 recently. And that is actually the smallest, lightest pair of AR glasses on the market. But that product will ship in the fall timeframe.
Okay, so you were out before Google Glass. So anyone that says, that looks like Google Glass. What was that like when that came out and you saw how they pushed that product in a totally different way than here? What did that feel like when you saw that?
You know, it was amazing for us. It really raised visibility for the whole category of product. It kind of gave people a frame of reference and kind of a way of thinking about how they would implement kind of a wearable display into their workflow. Obviously a very different concept of where we're going with kind of productivity-focused applications, but great for the whole category of product nonetheless.
But the Epson product you don't see really in the consumer space. You don't see me wearing it around and playing Minecraft while I'm talking to you.
A lot of drone operators are using it, or are kind of end consumers. So we definitely see that as kind of a consumer space. Hobbyist pilots. So one of our partners, actually called Aeroglass, has a solution for people who want a heads-up display when they're flying their small pilot. People with macular degeneration and some other eye disorders, we have other partners that are building solutions for them to be able to see, help process visual data more easily. So there are a lot of consumer applications, but they're kind of in niches right now.
Let's say your job is to scan through hours and hours of network footage. Let's say your job is to sit on your network and find all the interesting tidbits of information that you possibly can. Now, you could create a home-built setup. You could tie together a couple of Raspberry Pis, maybe a few tuners, definitely some capture equipment, or you could just use Snapstream. I'm speaking with Rakesh Agrawal, the CEO of Snapstream. Rakesh, what is Snapstream?
Yeah, so Snapstream is a device that allows you to record lots of television and then do different things with that television. You can search inside the shows. That's how folks like The Daily Show and Last Week Tonight get all of their TV clips. You can also stream the recordings over the network so that you put a DVR at the fingertips of all your users on the network. And then we have integration with Twitter and Facebook. So when you see a clip of last night's primaries or one of the political debates or the MTV Video Music Awards, there's a good chance that Snapstream was used to push small clips or a GIF to Twitter and Facebook of those moments.
That's just fantastic, because I know there's a lot of people who are always wondering about The Daily Show or about what John Oliver does with his program. Do they have staff members who are just watching these channels 24/7 in order to pull out the juiciest tidbits? And no, they use a solution like this that can help them record, identify, and then pull all those little bits and pieces into the broadcast. What did they do before Snapstream?
Yeah, well, today I think they do both. They still have people that are obsessively watching TV because the sort of fuzzy notion of, oh hey, that could make a great joke is still the domain of great producers and writers. But yeah, what they did before was they had like The Daily Show specifically is they had unpaid interns that would go for this stuff very happily.
That's a good internship. You watch TV.
Exactly, and so So now instead of, those interns are doing more productive work, because the work that would take them hours before, go find every place where, they're mentioning Obama and healthcare or Trump and small hands, that's done in seconds with Snapstream now.
Now, let's talk a little bit how it actually works. So I install this box into my colo, into my network, make sure that it's on my LAN so that I can have access for all of my employees or whoever needs to look at the footage. But how do I configure it? What are the things that I would need in my building in order to make Snapstream work properly?
Yeah, Snapstream is a lot like your home DVR. So you take your TV feed, whether it's satellite or cable or antenna, or a house cable feed, for example, and you plug that TV feed into the Snapstream appliance. That's a box that can record up to 10 television shows at a time. And so it's like a DVR on steroids. And then you connect that box into your network. The Snapstream server itself sits inside of a closet somewhere or a data center inside your building, and you use it from within any web browser on your desktop, Mac or PC. One of the things we're showing here at NAB is native support for the iPad. And then from that client, you have a program guide, you tell it what to record. Unlike your home DVR, we have options to record a channel 24/7. So you could record CNN all the time, forever, into perpetuity. And do that for 10 different channels. We have an in-house test system where we're recording 30 channels of TV. Our largest customer probably records 100 channels of broadcast television concurrently. So, and then, once the shows are recorded, or even while they're being recorded, you can tweet moments you can tweet moments as a GIF or as a screenshot. You can add meme text to the screenshots. You can upload native videos to Twitter and to Facebook. And then we have search capabilities. You can say, show me all the mentions of Trump small hands, and it will instantly go find all those. Or you can, we're really deep in search. We have a team member who has a PhD in computer science and specializes in something called NLP, natural language programming, and so it's language algorithms. So he does things to clean up the closed captioning, because closed captioning is not always great.
Is it pulling that search off of the closed captioning, or is it actually recognizing speech and turning it into text?
No, the closed captioning is the basis for our search. It's a combination, but closed captioning is like the bulk of what we're searching. We also search over the metadata about the shows, which is data that we license. It's the data that comprises the program guide. But primarily, we're searching over closed captioning.
So it is a DVR on steroids, but it's also not, because my DVR doesn't have the ability to have me say, show me 15 clips that have this phrase in it, or show me 20 clips that deal with a Washington, D.C. story. I think that's the key to making Snapstream actually useful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely beyond what your DVR can do. The integration with Twitter and Facebook, same thing. It's beyond what a DVR can do. In a lot of ways, what we do as a company broadly, the social integration, the ability to stream video, TV over the network, we do things that consumer DVRs don't do, so that businesses and organizations who rely on television in one way or the other can leverage television for whatever their mission is.
Right. How many users can stream at the same time? So let's say I start getting programming on my Snapstream. 400 people, 200 people, 12 people?
Yeah, so actually that is a great question, because we're pushing into schools where you'll have a school district that has 5,000 classrooms or 10,000 classrooms, 100 schools, 50 classrooms per school, and they want to be able to push television to all of those teachers. So theoretically, you could have, 5,000 people push play at the same time. And so that actually is our limit right now, is about 5,000 concurrent playback sessions streamed over, and we're pushing that limit specifically for this new thing called Snapstream EDU. The DVR product, which we have at all these TV shows and government organizations, the limit on that generally is about 100 concurrent playback sessions. But it's not an easy question to answer because it depends on the network bandwidth within that organization, and it depends on exactly what quality that they're recording things at. But as you know, you can't take for granted video streaming inside of an organization because it is can be a challenging problem.
Right. Now, I have to ask this. Is there a strategy in case someone at a broadcasting association comes to you and says, wait a minute, it sounds an awful lot like rebroadcasting? Because I understand the use case in an organization that does something like The Daily Show or something like This Week, Next Week, or whatever it was with John Oliver.
Last Week Tonight.
Week Tonight, thank you. But when you start dealing with like a school or a campus, does it become rebroadcasting if you've got 100 users who are pulling down the same broadcast at the same time?
Yeah. So first of all, most of our customers are using Snapstream in the context of fair use.
Right.
There's a well-established set of laws, and the model that we have with Snapstream is a lot like a VCR, and that mode of use has been tried all the way up to the Supreme Court. There was a old case, MPAA versus Sony Betamax, and so I think that whole model is well covered. As far as distribution within schools, most of the schools that we do work with, they strike agreements with their cable providers that allow for that kind of distribution. So it's basically for that organization, the limits are set.
So what's next? I mean, this is a very unique product. It has a very, very unique use case that I think has made many people laugh, and can also be incredibly informative. If you do have a social media outreach, this is a fantastic way for you to scan through the media to look for mentions of your product, your service. But going beyond that, maybe looking towards NAB 2017, 2018, where would you like to see Snapstream grow? What would you like to see the market to push into?
So I think probably today, right now, the fastest growing part of Snapstream is the integration with Twitter and Facebook. We're doing a lot there, and that's where we're adding the most customers. Probably this time next year, I'll say the same thing about what we're doing with education. That product is a little bit different. It's the same general category of, you could say, like making TV more internet-like for within organizations. And we see that problem in schools. We see schools wanting to be able to easily push television, just like they push internet access to teachers, giving the same teachers the tool of accessing TV programming. That's another information service that they want to provide to them.
We've been speaking with Rakesh Agrawal. He is the CEO of Snapstream. If you are looking for a solution to record multiple channels of video and then have the ability to pluck out the choice gems, this really is the only solution. Rakesh, thank you very much for speaking with us. If they wanted to find out more about Snapstream, if they wanted to see if maybe you have the solution for them, where can they go?
We don't have a website. No, I'm kidding. It's www.snapstream.com.
I am here at the Wowza booth. Now, there's so many things to see at NAB, and they caught my eye because we've been talking so much about live streaming. There's Facebook Live. Everybody's doing it. We, of course, have been live streaming for a long time. But I wanted to see some of the people that are behind the technology, really the guts of live streaming, what makes it go. So, Christian, tell us a little bit about Wowza.
Yeah, you bet. So, we're based in Golden, Colorado. We're doing live streaming, some video on demand stuff for companies like NASA, SpaceX, at an affordable price point for K through 12, nonprofits, government. So pretty neat stuff.
So you've been around for a decade.
We have.
And so what have been the biggest changes that you've seen? So you've been around for a long time, but there's a lot of people that are just discovering this now. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the field?
I would say 360 VR, premium support with Wowza, live streaming, things like that have changed a lot. Adaptive bitrate streaming has been huge, so some of the trends and things I've seen.
So you talked about NASA. Can you tell us some of your other big clients?
NBC Universal as well. We're working with Facebook, So Periscope, all sorts of folks.
So the big ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what can you? I know you probably can't talk about a lot of this, but what do you actually provide for Facebook?
So we're working on some video through Facebook. There is a ton of stuff that I don't know, so I don't want to, say anything that I probably shouldn't. But we're excited to be working with them as well.
And so, what about the security issues with live streaming? Do you provide security, encryption, anything like that? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So secure token, authentication. We partner with all the major DRM encryption folks, Verimatrix, Easy DRM, By DRM for security.
And so, what are some of the other features you offered? We did a little bit of a demo, but like some of the, fast forwarding, that kind of stuff. What kind of features can you guys offer?
Yeah, so for the base package of Wowza's streaming engine, we offer NDVR, which gives you the ability to record, fast forward, rewind live streams. Transcoding, as I mentioned, so delivering adaptive bitrate. Those are some of the main things that come to mind. Serving video to any device, anywhere. We're device agnostic. So publishing to iOS, Android, set-top boxes, smart TVs, all on the fly.
So you mentioned K through 12. What are you seeing? What are people streaming? What are they using it for for education?
Everything from academic content, commencement ceremonies, sporting events. Grandparents that are remote and would like to see the folks, and what they're up to at school is pretty cool to provide that technology to those guys.
Yeah. So you've been in this field for a while, and have you walked the floor? What are some of the things that you've seen people doing that have gotten you excited?
I have. I've cruised around a little bit. Some of the stuff downstairs is pretty neat. Some of the hardware. I'm trying to think. I think the VR and 360 stuff has been the shiny object, which is pretty cool.
And you said you guys are dabbling in VR. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're partnering with the folks at Video Stitch. We worked on a project with Sony Entertainment Group. Did a live 360 stream of. Was it Lollapalooza in Germany? So a pretty cool concert and delivering video to the end users with a pretty neat experience, which was pretty cool.
If I could only choose one company that here at NAB has been a disrupting force for years and years, it would be Blackmagic. They're always coming out with cutting edge, low cost, relatively, equipment that changes what we think we can do. Which is why I'm very happy to have next to me Mr. Bob Cornelia. He is the Senior Regional Manager for Blackmagic. Bob, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having us.
Now, Blackmagic, as I mentioned, you have that reputation for being disruptive. You give us gear that can do things that we only thought you could do with gear that was far, far more expensive. Is that just in your DNA? Do you like being the NAB troll?
Well, I wouldn't qualify it as a troll, but I understand what you're saying. But yeah, the whole business was founded on enabling the entire universe, for that matter, to be able to do the kind of high-end production that we have been accustomed to doing, but only at the high end, where it was a very selective group that could have access to that equipment. So we want to bring the masses access to great equipment at a low cost, and that's what we strive to do.
Now, Blackmagic has also the distinction of being in many different parts of the broadcast workflow. Some companies are really good at cameras, some other companies are really good at switchers, some other companies make, the editing software that we need. Blackmagic has a finger in pretty much every part of the pie. What was the thinking behind spreading out versus, say, sticking with your incredibly successful cameras?
Well, it's interesting. We did a lot of acquisitions over the last several years. I came from the DaVinci acquisition, which was back in 2009. So I went from being the youngest guy at DaVinci to the oldest guy at Blackmagic. It was kind of a rough weekend, but and so the thing about it is that we did that acquisition. Then we did the Ecolab acquisition for live switchers, and then we did the Teranex acquisition. We've done a Centel acquisition. We bought Fusion. So we've bought some players in different areas, and then we've been able to leverage the incredible IP that these companies had and cross-pollinate, if you will. I mean, the cameras really came out of, well, we have live switchers, now we need cameras. We have DaVinci Resolve, so we know all the foibles of different camera codecs. What if we made one that didn't need one? What if it was an open source type camera where, you know, you just use the file straight away and we put metadata in and all these kind of things. So each of the products sort of helps to feed the other areas. You know, what else do we need here? Oh, we can make that. And we definitely try to build the products that we think are needed, but also we're inclusive. We don't, you know, like even like Resolve works with all the camera standards. I mean, so it's a little bit, you know, we're not really on an island by any means. We just happen to make some products at some price points that are attractive to everybody.
That was actually going to be my next question, which is if each product category informs another project category, because you get 4K cameras and you say, well, we need a better 4K switcher. And if you've got a 4K switcher, you say we need a better 4K capable media converter. And then the editing software needs to be upgraded. How much of that is coordinated and how much of that just say goes out because we've got a new product and the other divisions will catch up?
Yeah, I think that we take you know, Grant Petty is our CEO and he looks at it all. And I think a lot of things are much better planned than they sometimes appear, but you know, and oftentimes people show up at NAB and they'll say, oh, you know, you should build, and you know, there's a problem. Most of the time, there are already products that are in his head anyway. But yeah, but sometimes you do run into a roadblock. And the perfect example was this year when we introduced this duplicator 4K. The idea was we're doing all this 4K content, but how do we distribute it to people? How do people actually get to watch it? You know, so, and we weren't thinking of like the Hollywood studios. We're just thinking about, you know, everyday people who are out there doing a press conference and they're doing it in 4K, and then how do they get it to somebody? So we made this great little duplicator that has 25 card slots, and you can record 25 at once in real time. It's got an H.265 encoder, and then you could daisy chain them, so you could record 150 or 500 cards or however many cards you want to hand, and then just hand them out at the end.
Let's go ahead and make the transition into the hardware, because the hardware is what people really like to see. I geek out every time I go to Blackmagic's booth at NAB. Show us this duplicator, because when you first brought this to the booth, I thought, oh, it's a switch that has ventilation. That's not ventilation. Those are SD card slots. You've got 25 of them there. Right. So and you've already said what the use case is. This is if you need to duplicate media, but was there such a big demand for this, or was this just something that Blackmagic made and now people are saying, oh yeah, I want that in my workflow?
Well, yeah, I mean, what we really designed here is that it takes up to 12 gig SDI in. So it's a live video in, like right now, we could have, you know, taken the output of your switcher and put it in here and started recording a whole bunch of, so actually, you think about that. I'm a guest on your show, and you guys have these recorded on the side, and I pull up and I go, hey, Bob, thanks for coming today, and here's the segment that we just did. You know, and you can also hit append, so if you want to stop for a little bit, and then when you re-record, it actually continues to record in the same file. So now you don't have a bunch of files, because the worst thing you need is take a disk that has a bunch of files. You just want the one file. And these cards will play right back into a 4K TV, or you know, on a card slot in the computer. So it's just, it was one of those things where you could see the eureka moment during the press conference where people are like, ah, I could use that. I could use these at the kids' school, and we could, you know, record the dance recital or whatever. So I think there are a lot of different uses. I hope that we find people will give us new ideas on how they were using it. But it was well received, and whenever you release a product that's sort of out of the ordinary, what you hope is that they get it. Because if they don't get it, then it doesn't do anybody any good. And this one definitely was one of those products that people got right away, and so it's been a big hit, and we're happy on. But more importantly, it's shipping now.
Yeah. Go get one.
Exactly.
That's the message. Now, it's interesting for a company to occasionally, maybe once in their lifetime, make a product that no one else has thought about, no one else has produced, and then it becomes, oh yeah, everyone needs to copy that. But Blackmagic seems to do that a lot. You came out with the first, you know, I'd say user viable, not a studio, 4K camera. You came out with some absolutely fantastic media converters that everyone uses if you need to have that in place 24/7. Last year it was the studio mini cameras that got people thinking, I can have a super high quality micro 4/3 camera that ties into my existing SDI network, and it's the size of a GoPro. What makes you come up with products that no one else is risking on yet?
think what it is we try and look at the industry and say, where are the problems? Where are the shortfalls? What do we think people need? And a lot of us at the company, we have production backgrounds and things like that. So we think about it, even years ago we made the camera converter, so you could convert HDMI into fiber and you get talk back and all these other, it's like, oh, where were those things back in the 80s when, when we were trying to use walkie-talkies to talk to each other, So I think that it's, we assess the market and you say, all right, where can we fit something in that's a little bit different? Because without a difference, then you're just making the same thing everybody else is making. That doesn't really do us any good, other than sometimes we hit prices that are insane. But like that micro studio camera, it was the size of a tennis ball. So before it was shipping, I would just carry a tennis ball and say, it's this big.
That's one way to do it. Now, we were drooling over both the 4K and the 1080p version of that micro studio, but there was another camera that you had on the wall last year, and that was the Ursa Mini. You've got, okay, show me this, because this is very gear lusty. This is an Ursa Mini, but it's set up unlike any other Ursa Mini I've ever seen. Tell me about what you've got in your hands.
Yeah, so this is the Ursa Mini, studio version of the Ursa Mini, basically. What we announced at NAB last year was the Ursa Mini body, and then at IBC we said, look, the PL version of this camera is now going to have lens control. So for studio style lenses, this is an ENG type lens, a very expensive one, but a good one. So there were a lot of people who said, look, we want to use your cameras in the studio camera configuration because you can shade the cameras directly with the SDI return input and all those kind of things. And so we said, all right, well, we need to be able to power and control the lens. We put the port here, and if you have a B4 mount, we have a B4 adapter, so you can use it on the PL version. And then this year we said, all right, well, to complete that in the studio use, we need a viewfinder. So we wanted to make a really high-end viewfinder. The original studio camera had it all built in one, but that was really designed for, churches and schools and things like that. But this one, let me get around. Sorry.
There are too many toys on the desk right now. All right, there we go.
So this one has a 7-inch screen, has an articulating, arm, and we can also actually swivel it back and forth or move the camera. So I mean, it's just got the buttons and the functions that the typical guys that are out there shooting sports and whatever, this is the kind of viewfinder they want. So we took the extra time to really build a high quality viewfinder, powers off the power and get the source off of the camera. And this will come later in the year. It's not quite finished, but we wanted to let people know that in addition to adding the new software that they can control the cameras in a studio environment, we also have a new studio viewfinder on its way. So it has tally and numbers. I have camera number 1 on here, and this product, I think this was also extremely well received because it was like, yeah, that's what we want. Because sometimes what we do is we make a product and then we kind of make that pro version. There's like the HyperDeck, then there was HyperDeck Studio Pro. The next generation of products tend to really step it up a notch. And then in this case, in the Ursa Mini, we have a whole new operating system that's coming out later this year. It's an amazing way to get around and navigate the menus without this extensive menu tree that we have now because we had too many features. So we are doing a complete rework of it. And that's been very well received. Of course, everybody wants a beta copy of that, but it's not available yet. But just to give people an idea that we're not finished with this camera, and clearly we're not from a hardware standpoint or a software standpoint to expand its capabilities.
That brings up something that might be an uncomfortable topic, but I think we should talk about it because our audience, as much as they love Blackmagic gear, there is a certain expectation that the very first feature set that comes out, the very first firmware that comes out, is always going to be, well, it's not going to be as good as it's going to be in 6 months.
Right.
And some people say, oh, well, Blackmagic releases with bugs. I like to think that Blackmagic releases and then they add on the features as they find out that users want them. What's that development cycle like?
Well, I think what it is what we try to do is announce what it's going to have. And then when it comes out, people go, well, now we need this, this, and this. And that's all fine. And a lot of times what we try and do is, it's a tough, when you have hardware and software and you're trying to make them both work together, you want to get to a point where you can actually start shipping these things. And you want to try and do it so that you're not leaving things out. But and especially because they're free upgrades,
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to complain about, well, I mean, you get a great camera right now, you get a great platform right now, and then they're going to add all these features. And then people will say, well, why aren't those available now? It's, well,
yeah.
Okay, sure, yeah.
You can only do so much, and and if we anticipate that something is going to take longer to do, is it worth? Wouldn't it be better to get the cameras out and have people be able to use them than to keep delaying it? So, that is a push-pull type of thing that does occur. Although this year with the products at the show, most of them were shipping now. So that was a mantra we were trying to do.
I actually see this as a good thing, because if people didn't want the gear, they wouldn't care.
True.
All right, Bob, what's next? We've got the duplicator, we've got the cameras. You've got this thing that, my co-host for our Maker Show, we know this very well. This is an Arduino, but it's got some interesting shields stacked on top.
So what we built was a 3 gig SDI Arduino shield. So we were able to put a SDI in and out on a mezzanine board here to throw on top of an Arduino. And then, this is actually one of the Grant Petty's specialty, he built this himself to control the cameras. So you can iris up and down, you can turn the tally on and off, and then you can change the focus and whatever. And what we're doing is we're just selling the board itself. People can buy their own Arduino. And really it's just a tinkerer's thing. People will make whatever they want to make with them. We're gonna ship the boards themselves in the next 6 weeks or so. They'll be $95, and people can buy their own Arduino and then build their own. So we're gonna include a disc that has the control breakouts for the controlling the cameras, and then some schematics for people to play around with. So this is like an engineer's little tinkering toy idea.
And for me, this sums up Blackmagic in a single product shot, and that is, you like to invite the people to tinker. You want people to take your gear and find out what they can do with it, rather than you telling them this is what it does and buy it and then leave us alone.
And then that's why we put out our SDKs on a lot of products. Even the Micro Cinema and the Micro Studio cameras last year had that expansion port that we called the hackable camera. You write your own interfacing, because at the end of the day, we shouldn't be telling you exactly how you do something. You should be able to, have some creative freedom. That's how we, create cool shows like this.
We have been speaking with Bob Cornelia, Senior Regional Manager at Blackmagic. He's been showing us all his toys, all the new products that you're going to find at the Blackmagic booth. Now, Bob, if they wanted to find out more about the Ursa Mini, they wanted to find out more about your duplicator, they wanted to find out more about the Shield, or anything else that Blackmagic has at their booth, of course, they should come to the show. But if they can't make it here, where do they find you?
Then they can go to www.blackmagicdesign.com.
I am here with Ricky from HPE. We're at the Intel booth, and they have a lot of the people who are using Intel processors and the amazing things they're doing with them. Tell us a little bit about HPE, Ricky.
So HPE, as you know, is a very broad server company. We've been doing basic servers for years, and now we're trying to get into the video space by allowing us to do real-time transcoding.
What do you have here?
So here we actually have one of our newest processors through Intel, where we have embedded CPU and GPU, and it's allowing us to transcode up to 25 HD streams in real time.
So you're streaming from here to the screen and to the iPad at the same time?
Yes. So it's actually, in the past, we had to transcode multiple files, and we had to store them, which had huge storage requirements. And now we're able to transcode to up to 25 devices at once. So we have one stream running to the television, one stream to the iPad. We could have up to 23 other devices, all at 1080p, 30 frames per second simultaneously, and up to 900 streams in a chassis.
It looks beautiful. I mean, on both, it looks amazing. So can we talk a little bit more about the hardware?
Okay, so each cartridge that we have here is a full server. So you're going to get embedded CPU as well as GPU, memory up to 4 terabytes of storage, as well as RAM. So you have up to 64 gigabytes of RAM per cartridge.
And what's running on there?
We can run Linux or Windows, Zen Server, VMware, a variety, Ubuntu, a variety, Celeste, CentOS. There's so many different operating systems you can run. Anything that you'd run on a standard E3 or E5 server.
So can you talk about any of your clients?
Well, one of them is iStream Planet. We actually had them come by earlier today. They've done things like stream the Super Bowl in 2015. They're implementing HP's technology right now with Intel processors to stream to their customers in real time, which wasn't really available a few years ago because you'd have to record the show, you'd have to transcode it to the format that you wanted, and then eventually load it to the web. Now they can record video in real time, push it out to the web, and transcode it to multiple devices, all instantly.
So the Super Bowl streaming, what other things are clients doing with it? What other things are they streaming?
It's really popular with OTT, bringing the streaming to the edge. So normally you'd have a centralized data center that did all of your transcoding, and from there you'd push it out. Well, with this system, you can have one at multiple locations. You don't have to have a central source anymore. You can put all of your streaming and media processing at the very edge of your network, which saves tons on storage and bandwidth.
So a lot of people are watching TV, but they can't put their devices down, right? Like, I know I'm guilty of it. I watch something, I watch The Walking Dead or whatever, and I'm still kind of thumbing through my phone, sometimes looking for that second screen experience that ties in with what I'm watching. That is at the core of what Applicaster is all about. Elena Yasukovic, I knew I was going to mispronounce that, Director of Account Management at Applicaster. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you up here. Apologies at first for
No problem.
destroying your name. But I'm very curious about what you guys are doing with Applicaster, because I feel like second screen is always pursued, but is really difficult to do correctly. You know, like, or rather, sometimes it's just as easily done as pulling out your phone and hopping onto Twitter. But creating kind of a tailored second screen experience seems to be at the core of what Applicaster is all about. Tell me a little bit about kind of your role with Applicaster and kind of what you're looking to achieve with Applicaster.
Sure. So just a little background on Applicaster as a company. We've been around 6 years or so, and we're a provider of app-driven TV experiences. So we are trying to tie in mobile to what you're doing on potentially a TV screen at home. And as you know, many people are now moving over to mobile. Yep. So all of that activity is happening there. But beyond the development of the apps, we're focusing on a lot of the social elements. So creating engagement between fans and programs that are on TV and creating a brand affinity there. My role with the company is Director of Account Management for North America. So my job is to learn about this market space. And unlike many other Israeli tech startups, we actually started internationally. So we're in Europe and Latin America, deployed heavily in some of the major players there, like Televisa in Mexico, RTL in Netherlands, and ProSieben in Germany. So trying to open up this market, learn about the needs, what is that crack in the market, how do we get in, and that's exactly what I'm doing today.
Are you encountering any hurdles or challenges here in the U.S. market that are very different from what you experience outside of it?
What we're finding here is that there's a need to bring social into the live experience. So our latest product actually is doing just that. It's called Live Plus. So within a mobile application, there would be a live player, and there's still that chatter that's happening on Twitter and Facebook about that particular topic. So what we've done is created a product that has both. So you've got a 2-in-1, and solving that problem between that toggling back and forth. Should I open up my Twitter app right now? Should I open up this specific broadcaster or media company's app? Well, if it's all in one and you're bringing everything back into your ecosystem, it's solving that.
Okay. And it's kind of keeping you locked into one single experience as opposed to having to hop around here and there. You kind of get lost, you get distracted, you don't return back because
Exactly.
Hey, you got an email and it's all over.
And there's a lot of value in that, because what's happening when you're bringing all the clients back to your ecosystem, you get better control, you find out how they're using that tool, get better data and analytics, and also you're able to now monetize on that targeted audience. And that's what we find really important here.
Absolutely. Okay. So tell us a little bit about kind of the app development aspect here. It looks like from all the reading that I've kind of done about Applicaster, you're kind of creating these white label apps for your partners, I suppose. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you tailor those based on needs.
So what we've done a little bit differently, which is key currently, is quickness and speed to market. So we've created this proprietary technology that allows us to make it more of a design experience and a design process versus an engineering and development process. So it's not project basis. In fact, you come to us, you tell us, do you want to have a video-centric experience or it's something else? So together, we'll sit on one side of the table, and within a matter of days, you can now have an app. And with that ability, you're able to have a lot of segments and micro-segmentation, which is what a lot of people are currently looking at today, so we can address those issues.
Wow, so turning that around in a matter of days, that's pretty impressive. Do you find the needs of your clients to be very similar? Is everybody kind of looking for the same thing, or are there ever any complications kind of thrown in there that are unique challenges?
So everyone is trying to differentiate themselves from one another. Nowadays, you can get and consume content anywhere. So what is it about your app experience that's different from the others? So everybody's trying to find that, but our specialty is really the engagement. And like I said earlier, brand affinity, creating those emotional ties with the product and giving a little bit extra inside of that app. So maybe do you have some sort of exclusive content maybe that you're willing to share there versus on the social media scene? That's what we're doing. So we're bringing people back with that social tool, that feed, and you're now able to take that right from the media company's property.
How challenging is it to continue, because you're working with a lot of companies, a lot of apps, similar challenges, I imagine, across all of them. How challenging is it to make these individual experiences seem unique from each other?
I think that would be the content. Of course, we would help you brand and make it beautiful, but this is a true team effort. So when it comes to Applicaster and the way that we work, we're trying to speak to the marketing people, the digital people, the online strategy or web strategy or mobile strategy. They're all working together to create something that's really unique and different. As you know, this market is changing very rapidly. None of us really know what that key is, so we're all trying to figure it out together. But maybe it's something like microsegmentation. Maybe you want to develop apps for very specific niches. Say it's a sports network. So now you can narrow it down to baseball, basketball, football, golfing, fly fishing, and everybody's got their own need. Maybe there's different platforms for that. And with the ability to just have that up and running in days, that helps.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big differentiator there. And what kind of ways are viewers participating through this? Especially, I mean, primarily your new product, it kind of seems like it works with services that people might already be using. How are they getting involved in these experiences?
So it's quite simple, actually. With the Live Plus product, there's going to be an overlay on the player with tweets coming in via specific hashtags and handles. So these are things that you would anyway be looking in the social realm for. They're now going to be popping up right over, and you can retweet, repost right from your mobile device, no longer bouncing back and forth. There is a learning curve. That's something that we do know. So the crowd does have to migrate over from Facebook and Twitter. We're not here to replace that. There's still going to be major players in the space. There's value there. But if you've got exclusive content and if you've got engagement tools such as polling, trivia, questions, and gamifying that experience, and maybe even tying in some prizes or some sort of incentive to get people in, I think there will be a draw and people will continue to come back.
Sure. And finally, who are you targeting with this? I mean, obviously, it sounds like anyone who has content and needs an app to kind of pull people in. But what are some of your partners, if you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So our experience is heavy in the entertainment industry. So we have worked with formats like X Factor, The Voice, Amazing Race, and we've done great things with that, specifically with the engagement tools. But here in the States, we're finding that it's not only entertainment and news, but sports is a huge space for us. We're getting a lot of interest in the experience for those that are at home on the couch, watching the TV, and what should they be doing on their mobile device. And then also for those that are in stadium, how do you keep the crowds coming and do something unique for them?
All right. Oh, so you could even tie this into people actually at these events,
Certainly.
having
So-
the second screen experience while they're
Certainly.
sitting courtside.
So that's a great thing to talk about with the gamification. This could be popping up on your mobile device right in front of you. You're answering the questions in real time. It could be tied into the Jumbotron. It could be tied into the TV screens that are inside of the suites. So this could be a special experience for those that are season ticket holders or for those that have a suite.
What have I not touched on here? Because this is obviously very cool stuff. It's applicaster.com. Am I missing anything major?
No, just I think the importance is to keep up and get ready for what the future has to hold for us. And I think there's 3 major components to what needs to be done, and these are all needs that we're trying to address. And one of them is ability to access an app. So make sure to keep everything on the mobile screen. You want to be able to access when you're out at dinner, whether the TV is taken at home. You want to have a way to access something live. You want to have customization. Maybe my ads while I'm watching a sports game are different than your ads. So monetize on that. Maybe I'm more interested in CoverGirl makeup and you're more interested in the next Ford car. So if you have that, and lastly, interactivity. Keep the audience engaged.
Sure. Actually, one more question I have is as far as like updating these apps, you've worked with your partners to help them create a really nice app. Do you continue support for that app beyond, or is that then kind of fall into their lap and it's theirs to control from?
We remain a partner all the way. So we are a SaaS-based company. Service is key to us, and we consider ourselves to be service-oriented. We want to make sure you have the best experience possible. Included in that package is, of course, the quarterly updates that are necessary with Apple and iOS devices. We do have in-house designers to help you continue with that and changing things, and also with the advertising and sponsorships, with the flexibility of the way that we design these apps. It's not in the line of code. Someone can easily just log in and with the click of a button change it out. So they do have the flexibility to manage with our CMS, which is easy to use, I would say, but we do remain in the picture, and we're happy to do so.
Surrounded by the most incredible cameras, the most advanced switchers, and some of the gear that you need to perfect your workflow. It's very easy to think of NAB as just a big swap meet for gear, but that's not the case. You see, this meeting of the minds, this gathering of some of the most creative, most imaginative people in the business really does give us a melting pot, a way for us to get inspiration from our fellows in the business. I want to thank everyone who made this special possible. Of course, to TWiT TV for sending us to NAB, to LiveView for giving us a home while we're here, and of course Panasonic and NewTek for letting us stream it all out to the world. Until next time, I'm Father Robert Ballecer, the digital Jesuit, saying so long and goodbye from NAB 2016.